The pantry at my daughter's house was barely wide enough for two people, which may have been why Allison pulled me in there. She could close the door without technically touching me. Through the slats, I could see Richard at the head of the table, wearing the blue shirt I'd bought him 2 birthdays ago. Celeste sat beside him. Graham was opening wine. On the counter behind us, the roast I had cooked was resting beneath a tent of foil. "I thought I was eating with you," I said. Allison glanced toward the dining room. Celeste's brother came. "We're 1 chair short. There's a chair in Graham's office. That's not the point. I still had my apron on. A smear of flour crossed the front of my black blouse because Allison's mixer had thrown a fit halfway through the potatoes. What is the point?" Her face tightened with the weary patience people use when they believe you're making them say something cruel. "Please stop acting like this is still your family." On the other side of the door, Richard laughed at something Celeste said. It was the big laugh, the one he used when he wanted a room to know he was enjoying himself. I looked down at the silver cake server in my hand. The absurd thing was that I had spent 20 minutes that morning repairing its loose handle so no one would cut Richard's birthday pie with a butter knife. 3 days earlier, Allison called while I was cleaning out my refrigerator. I was standing with one hand on a jar of mustard that had expired during the final year of my marriage. I'd been keeping it for reasons no therapist would respect. "Tell me you remember Dad's birthday," she said. "I remember your father's birthday. I was present for 68 of them. You weren't present when he was 1. I'm counting the years I had to hear about it." Allison laughed, though not for long. She'd inherited Richard's tendency to enjoy a joke until it interfered with the next item on her agenda. "I'm doing dinner Sunday," she said. "The usual people, just family." There had once been a time when just family included me without further definition. I set the mustard in the trash. "What are you making?" There was a pause. That was Allison's version of knocking before entering with a demand. I thought maybe Dad's pot roast. My pot roast. "Mom, I'm not objecting. I'm identifying the roast. You know what I mean. He won't eat anybody else's. Richard would eat anybody's pot roast. He simply preferred that the person who cooked it understand dissatisfaction was part of his digestive process. I can send you the recipe. You know, recipes don't work for me. They work the same way for everyone. No, they don't. Yours always leave out some tiny thing you do automatically." She was right. I never wrote down that the onions needed 10 minutes alone in the pan before the carrots went in. I didn't specify that Richard liked the outside of his potatoes browned almost to the point where any reasonable person would call for an investigation. 41 years of feeding someone creates knowledge too petty to feel precious until another person requests it. Allison softened her voice. "Would you come early and help me? How early? Maybe 2. Dinner was at 6. I took the mustard back out of the trash, wiped the jar, and put it in the refrigerator door. "What else are you serving? Whatever goes with pot roast. That answer is why your recipes don't work." She laughed again. This time I let myself enjoy it. We discussed potatoes, carrots, salad, and Richard's lemon icebox pie. Allison said she could buy dessert. I told her grocery store lemon pie tasted like furniture polish. She accused me of snobbery. I accused her of trying to kill her father on his birthday. By the end of the call, I had agreed to make everything except the salad. "Having you there will make it feel right," she said before hanging up. I stood in the kitchen with the phone still against my ear after the line went quiet. There are sentences you believe because you need them to mean more than the speaker intended. Sunday dinner had started in my house when Allison was in college. Richard traveled for work then, and on the weeks he came home, he wanted one meal where nobody ate over a sink or out of a cardboard box. His sister, Lorraine, began coming, then her husband. Later, Graham appeared, first as Allison's nervous boyfriend who called me Mrs. Mercer and offered to wash dishes before we'd finished eating. The dinners continued through retirements, surgeries, political arguments, Lorraine's divorce, and my own. When Richard left, Sunday moved to Allison's house in the name of neutrality. Neutrality, I discovered, was a country where I arrived through the side door carrying groceries. I went early because Allison worked long hours managing a medical supply office and because cooking calmed me. Celeste went later because arriving at 2 to peel potatoes would apparently have created emotional complications. By 6, I was tired and smelled like onions. Celeste entered in perfume and soft sweaters, usually carrying flowers in a vase she expected to take home. No one had ordered me to accept this arrangement. That was the part I had trouble admitting. On Friday morning, I bought a chuck roast. Lemons, potatoes, heavy cream, fresh thyme, and 2 bottles of wine. Allison had asked me to pick those up too, since I was already going. I placed the receipt in my purse, although we both knew I would never give it to her. At noon, my sister Joanne called. "What are you doing Sunday?" she asked. "Richard's birthday." There was a pause so clean I could hear her opinion forming. Why? Because he was born. Why are you involved? Allison asked me to help. Help how? With dinner. Meaning cook it. I'm not discussing this if you're going to repeat everything I say in an ugly voice. I used my regular voice. Your regular voice has become very judgmental since you turned 70. I'm 72, and my voice has earned tenure. I tucked the phone between my shoulder and ear while I zested lemons. Joanne lived 40 minutes away and had never liked Richard, which was inconvenient because she had liked being right about him. "Are you invited?" she asked. "Of course I'm invited." Did Allison use that word? She said having me there would make it feel right. That is not the same sentence. I'm not applying for a security clearance, Joanne. It's dinner at my daughter's house. Wear something nice. What does that mean? It means don't show up dressed like the help. I hung up on her. Then I looked down at the old yellow apron tied around my waist and took it off. Saturday afternoon, Graham came by to collect the roasting pan. Allison owned 3 pans, none large enough for the amount of food she routinely expected other people to make. He stood on my porch in running shoes and a faded college sweatshirt, holding a paper bag from the bakery near my house. "Peace offering," he said. "You haven't offended me recently. I'm planning ahead." Inside the bag was a cinnamon roll with pecans. Graham remembered I liked pecans because he paid attention in quiet, almost secretive ways. I handed him the roasting pan and the silver cake server, whose handle twisted if you pressed too hard. "Tell Allison to be careful with that." He tested it. "I can fix this." "So can I." "I know. I was trying to be useful. At least one of us should be." The joke landed strangely. Graham lowered his eyes to the pan. "You okay with Sunday?" he asked. "Why wouldn't I be?" "No reason. You and Joanne should form a club. You can ask suspicious questions and refuse to explain them." He smiled, but his ears turned pink. Graham had always blushed when he withheld something. It was one of the reasons he was terrible at cards and marriage. "Celeste has been worried it might be awkward," he said. "Celeste has attended Sunday dinner with me for 2 years. This is Dad's birthday." "Yes, Graham. It has been happening annually." He rubbed his thumb over the cake server's loose handle. "Allison wants everybody comfortable." I waited for him to say something else. He didn't. "Then she should buy better dining chairs," I said. After he left, I stood at my front window and watched him place the pan in his car with unnecessary care. At 1 on Sunday, I changed into black slacks and the blouse Joanne had given me the previous Christmas. I packed the ingredients into 2 canvas bags, chilled the pie filling in a lidded bowl, and wrapped Richard's gift. Buying him a present had not been Allison's idea. It had been mine. I'd found a first edition of a mystery novel he loved. Richard had read the paperback on our honeymoon and spent half the trip predicting the murderer incorrectly. The book was expensive enough that I had walked out of the shop without it, circled the block, and gone back. I wrote, "Happy 70th, Richard. You still never see the ending coming." It was the sort of message an old friend might write. I had become skilled at describing our marriage with smaller words. Allison's side door was unlocked. It always was on Sundays, at least for me. "Hello," I called. "In here." She was in the kitchen wearing leggings, 1 sock, and a towel twisted around her wet hair. 3 grocery bags sat unopened on the floor. "You said 2, I told her. It's 1:58. You aren't dressed. That's why I needed you at 2. She kissed my cheek as she passed. I love your blouse. The compliment disarmed me so efficiently I almost admired it. Graham came in from the dining room carrying extra leaves for the table. I tightened the server. I was going to do that, I know. I needed the victory. He had set 7 places. I counted automatically. Richard, Celeste, Lorraine, and her current boyfriend, Graham, Allison, and me. My place was at the far end beside Graham. There was no name card, of course, but my water glass contained ice. I always wanted ice. Celeste considered it bad for digestion. That tiny detail loosened something in my chest. For the next 3 hours, the kitchen behaved like every kitchen before a family occasion. The potatoes boiled over. Allison lost the salad tongs and accused Graham of putting them somewhere creative. Graham found them in her hand. I seared the roast while the smoke alarm shrieked, and Allison stood beneath it waving a dish towel as though surrendering to an aircraft. At 4, she poured us each half a glass of wine. "To not killing anybody," she said. "Lower your expectations. It improves the holidays." She leaned against the counter beside me. Without makeup and with damp hair, she looked younger, though not like a child. I could see the woman she had become and every previous version of her moving underneath. "I'm glad you came," she said. "I always come." "I know." There was guilt in the way she said it, but I mistook guilt for gratitude because that was kinder to both of us. Richard arrived at 5:30, carrying no food and announcing that traffic had been designed by socialists. He hugged me before he removed his coat. "Smells like home," he said. Celeste heard him. I saw it in the brief stillness of her smile. She surprised me by crossing the kitchen and handing me a small pot of rosemary instead of her usual flowers. "For you," she said. "Allison told me yours died. It did not die. Richard drowned it while I was visiting Joanne. Richard opened the refrigerator. That plant was sick when you left. It was Mediterranean. It didn't need to swim." Celeste laughed. Richard looked offended for half a second, then laughed too. For one dangerous moment, we seemed like people who had survived something without becoming enemies. At 5:45, the doorbell rang. Allison frowned. Everyone expected had arrived. A man's voice boomed from the foyer, followed by Celeste saying, "What are you doing here?" Her brother Dean walked in carrying a bottle of bourbon and the confidence of someone who had never wondered whether there would be room for him. "My meeting got canceled," he said. "Thought I'd surprise the birthday boy." Richard clapped him on the shoulder. Allison looked toward the dining table. Then she looked at me. Dean looked from face to face, still smiling. "If it's a problem, I can eat standing up." "Don't be ridiculous," Richard said. "We can fit one more." "We can," I said. "There's a chair in the office." Allison's eyes stayed on mine. "Mom, can I talk to you for a second?" She didn't wait for an answer. She walked into the pantry and held the door for me. There was no reason to close it. The pantry contained shelves of canned tomatoes, cereal, paper towels, and an impressive number of expired protein bars Graham bought whenever he briefly decided to become a different man. We weren't discussing state secrets. Still, Allison closed the door. "You don't need to fix everything," she whispered. "I'm not fixing anything. I'm locating a chair." Dean came unexpectedly. I watched him do it. "Please don't get sarcastic. I'm trying to understand why we're standing beside the canned beans." She pressed 2 fingers against the space between her eyebrows. "This is already awkward." "For whom?" "Celeste. Dad. Everybody." "Dean looks comfortable." "That isn't what I mean." I could hear him outside asking Graham where he kept the good bourbon. His voice filled houses without permission. Allison said, "I thought you would probably head home once we sat down." "Why would you think that?" She glanced toward the slatted door as if the answer might be visible through it. "You came to help me cook. I came for your father's birthday. You and Dad don't celebrate birthdays together anymore. We are about to serve him a dinner I made. That was different." "How?" "Mom, please." It was the plea that offended me. She wasn't asking me to understand. She was asking me to make the problem disappear before anyone noticed it existed. I thought I was eating with you, I said. Celeste's brother came. We're one chair short. There's a chair in Graham's office. That's not the point. What is the point? Her mouth changed before the words arrived. I saw her choose them and dislike them and use them anyway. Please stop acting like this is still your family. Beyond the pantry, ice dropped into a glass. Someone laughed. The roast sat on the counter, resting beneath foil because I had taken it out at exactly the right time. I looked at the cake server in my hand. I'd been about to place it beside the pie. Allison reached for my wrist. I didn't mean you're not my family. I stepped back, and her fingers closed on nothing. Then what did you mean? You know what I meant. No, I really don't. I mean this group, Dad and Celeste, and all of us together. It's not the same anymore, and you keep behaving like it is. You asked me to make it feel the same. I asked you to help with dinner. You asked me to cook your father's birthday meal, bring the wine, and find the serving pieces you borrowed, and I appreciate that. Do you? Her eyes filled, which made me angry in a new way. I was the one being removed, but somehow I was also in danger of making my daughter cry. I'm trying to manage an impossible situation, she said. No, you aren't. You found the easiest person to move. That's unfair. Is it? She opened the door a few inches, checked the kitchen, then closed it again. That small movement settled something in me. She wasn't ashamed of what she was doing. She was afraid somebody else might hear how it sounded. Did Graham know? I asked. Know what? That I wasn't staying. This isn't some conspiracy. I didn't call it one. He knew Celeste was worried about tonight. Celeste just brought me rosemary. Allison stared at me as though rosemary had no place in a serious discussion. She's trying, she said. So was I. You're making this bigger than it has to be. A knock touched the door. Graham's voice came through it. Everything okay? Yes, Allison said immediately. I opened the door. Graham stood there holding the office chair. His face changed when he saw mine. I figured we could squeeze this in at the end, he said. Allison looked at the chair, then at the table. There isn't enough room. There is if Richard moves over. That puts Dean beside Mom. Dean raised his glass from across the room. I've had worse neighbors. Nobody laughed. Celeste's gaze moved from Allison to me. Richard was slicing cheese from the appetizer tray, either unaware or unwilling to become aware. I set the cake server on the counter. You won't need the chair, I said. Graham didn't put it down. Elaine, it's fine. It wasn't fine. But saying so in front of everyone would have forced me to explain, and I couldn't bear to repeat my daughter's sentence while she stood there. Allison touched my elbow. Mom, don't do this. That almost made me laugh. I looked at her hand until she removed it. I untied my apron and folded it over the back of the kitchen stool. My purse was beneath the console table in the foyer. My coat hung beside Celeste's, the sleeves pressed together. Richard followed me. Where are you going? Home. What happened? I've been here since 2. I'm tired. You can't leave before dinner. I waited for some sign that he understood the irony. He looked genuinely confused. My stomach's been preparing for that roast since Thursday, he said. The roast is staying, Richard. Well, obviously. Behind him, Allison said, Mom is upset because Dean came. Dean lowered his bourbon. I said I could stand. I am not upset because Dean came. What are you upset about? Richard asked. The room became quiet. Celeste stood near the dining table with both hands around her wine glass. Lorraine's boyfriend studied the label on his beer as if it contained emergency instructions. Lorraine herself watched me with the sharpened expression of a woman who knew her brother well. I could have told them. For a moment, I wanted to watch Allison hear her own words in that room. Then Richard sighed. It was a small, familiar sound, impatience dressed as exhaustion. I had heard it when I asked him to come home earlier, when I wanted him to call his mother, when the kitchen faucet leaked for 6 months. It meant he was waiting for me to become easier. I put on my coat. I hope you have a nice birthday. He followed me to the side door. "Elaine, for God's sake." Graham still held the office chair. I drove 3 blocks before realizing Richard's present was on the sideboard in Allison's dining room. The first call came as I turned onto the main road. Allison's name filled the screen mounted on my dashboard. I let it ring. The second call came 4 minutes later. I answered because mothers are slow learners. "Where are the birthday candles?" she asked. I gripped the steering wheel hard enough to feel the stitching beneath my palms. "Excuse me?" "The candles." I checked the junk drawer, but there are only those little skinny ones, and some are broken. The candles are in the blue bag with the lemons. "What blue bag?" "The one you moved off the counter because it didn't match your kitchen." There was a pause, then muffled movement. "Okay." I found them. I waited. Allison said, "You could come back. Do you have another cancellation?" "What? A second person you weren't expecting left? Is there room now?" "Mom, I said that badly. You said it very clearly. Dad keeps asking what happened. Tell him I'm not going to ruin his birthday." The road ahead blurred. I blinked until the lane markings became solid again. "No," I said. "Apparently that's my job." I ended the call. At home, I carried nothing inside because everything I had prepared was sitting in Allison's kitchen. My house smelled faintly of lemon zest and the rosemary plant Richard had drowned 2 years earlier, which had not died at all. It had recovered in the dining room window after I cut away the rotten roots. I poured a glass of water, forgot to drink it, and stood at my own table. The table had a leaf in the middle that I no longer needed. One end held unopened mail and a basket of clean laundry. The other end was empty except for a shallow scratch Richard had made moving a television in 1997. He had denied making it, even though the television was still sitting on the table when I discovered it. My phone buzzed. "Graham, I'm sorry. I read the message 3 times. Not what happened. Not Allison didn't mean it, just I'm sorry." I typed, "Did you know?" The dots appeared, vanished, then returned. "I knew she thought you might leave before dinner. I didn't know she had decided it." That answer was carefully built, each word placed where it could carry the least weight. "You warned me yesterday," I wrote. "I tried." "No, you didn't." He did not respond. I finally drank the water. It tasted metallic, though there was nothing wrong with the glass. At 7:30, Joanne called. I watched her name pulse on the screen. If I answered, she would hear it in my voice. She would ask whether I had worn something nice, and I might begin crying so hard that my older sister would get in her car and drive 40 minutes in the dark to say something vicious about Richard. I sent the call to voicemail. At 8:14, Celeste texted me, "Thank you for dinner. The roast was wonderful. I'm sorry you had to leave." I read it once, then again. Had to leave. The sentence was polite enough to hide almost anything. I typed, "Did Allison tell you I wasn't staying for dinner?" This time there were no dots. 10 minutes passed, then 20. I changed out of the black blouse and hung it carefully instead of dropping it in the hamper. The flower streak was still visible near the waist. I rubbed it with my thumb, but that only spread it. When I returned to the kitchen, Celeste had answered. She said you preferred to go before we ate. She said it would be more comfortable for everyone. I sat down. Another message arrived immediately. "I thought it was your choice." I believed her. That was the surprising part. Celeste could be vain, territorial, and so committed to appearing gracious that a simple thank you sometimes became a 3-act play, but she was not a convincing liar. I wrote, "It wasn't." Her reply came quickly. "I'm sorry." 2 apologies in one evening, neither from the person who had closed the pantry door. At 9, Richard called. I considered ignoring him. Instead, I answered and said nothing. "Dinner was excellent," he began. "I'm glad. The pie was a little soft. Happy birthday." "Elaine, wait. Allie's upset." I looked across the room at the recovered rosemary plant. "Is she?" "She says you misunderstood something," she said. "What did she tell you?" she said. He paused. "That isn't important. It is to me." "Well, I don't know exactly. Something about the seating. You know how emotional she gets when she hosts." Allison had not told him. She had served my food, lit my candles, and protected his appetite from the knowledge of what it had cost. Richard's voice became firmer. Walking out like that was childish. The old reflex rose in me. Explain gently, soothe him, make the conversation survivable. I let the silence remain instead. "Did you ask where I was before dessert?" I said. "What? Good night, Richard." He was still saying my name when I ended the call. The phone rang again before I made it out of the kitchen. I expected Allison. It was Lorraine. "Are you all right?" she asked. Lorraine had been my sister-in-law for most of my adult life. After Richard and I divorced, she informed both of us that she was too old to divide her loyalties according to paperwork. Then she continued inviting me to lunch while never challenging her brother in a room where he could hear her. "I'm fine. Richard says you left because there weren't enough chairs. Richard wasn't in the pantry." "What happened in the pantry?" I pressed my fingers against my eyelids. "Ask Allison." I did. She said you took something the wrong way. That's a useful phrase. It makes the listener responsible for whatever the speaker did. Lorraine exhaled. I could picture her sitting in her car. She always made difficult calls from the driver's seat, even when the car was parked in her own garage. "Dean shouldn't have stayed," she said. "Dean was invited the moment he arrived. This isn't about him." "Well, what is it about?" I nearly told her. I wanted one person who had sat at that table to know exactly what Allison said, but another part of me wanted to see how long they could enjoy not knowing. "I'm tired, Lorraine. I've never seen you leave pot roast behind. That almost broke me. I'll talk to you later." Elaine. I ended the call before her concern could become another problem I had to solve. Sleep came in brief, irritating installments. At 2 a.m, I remembered I had left the wine opener in Allison's top drawer. At 3:15, I wondered whether Dean had taken my chair or whether Graham had returned it to the office before dinner. At 4, I was furious with myself for caring. My mind kept revising the evening. In one version, I opened the pantry door and repeated Allison's sentence loudly enough for everyone to hear. In another, I carried the roast home. In a particularly satisfying version, I took only the gravy. At 7, I gave up and made coffee. Allison's message arrived while the machine was still dripping. I don't know where to start. Last night was supposed to be about Dad, and instead everyone spent dinner asking why you left. I'm sorry my wording hurt you, but you put me in a terrible position. You knew Celeste was uncomfortable. I thought you understood you were helping me, not trying to recreate the old Sunday dinners. Leaving without explaining made it seem like I had thrown you out, which I did not. Dad was hurt and embarrassed. Graham thinks I should apologize again, but I honestly feel like you owe me one too. It was impressive how many times a person could arrange the word "I" around someone else's injury. I read the message while my coffee cooled. Then I read it again, searching for evidence that my daughter existed somewhere inside it. I began typing. You told me. I deleted it. After everything I have done, I deleted that too. Mothers keep entire warehouses of unpaid invoices. Once we begin reading from them, nobody leaves with dignity. I set the phone face down and carried my coffee into the dining room. At 8:30, Joanne knocked on my front door. She wore jeans, a red quilted coat, and the expression of someone arriving to identify a body. "I didn't call you," I said. "You didn't answer me. That is usually considered a request for privacy, not in this family." She walked past me carrying a paper bag. Joanne had brought 2 breakfast sandwiches and her own tea because she considered my tea bags historical artifacts. She set the bag on the table. "Tell me. I don't want you saying you knew this would happen. I won't say it. You'll think it loudly. I can chew." I told her. Not the graceful version. The whole thing. The pantry, the chair, the sentence, the candles. When I reached Richard's complaint about the pie, Joanne put down her sandwich and stared at the wall. "What?" I asked. "I'm choosing among several crimes. Don't be dramatic. I drove here before breakfast. Dramatic is already on the table." She stood and began pacing through my dining room. "What did you say to Allison?" "Nothing yet." "Good. Give me your phone." "No." I'll be restrained. You once called Richard a discount Caesar in a Christmas card. It was accurate and seasonal. Despite myself, I laughed. The sound came out wrong, and then I was crying. Joanne sat beside me so quickly, her chair scraped the floor. She did not say there, or rub my back. We came from women who believed crying should be treated like a nosebleed. Lean forward and wait for it to stop. I cooked the entire meal, I said. I know, I bought him a book. I know. No, you don't. It was a first edition. It cost $225. Her head snapped toward me. You spent $225 on that man? This is why I didn't tell you. I'm trying to be supportive, but you keep adding offensive details. I wiped my face with a paper napkin. She said I wasn't part of the family. She said that group wasn't your family. What is the difference? There isn't one. I'm making sure we hate her for the correct offense. I don't hate her. I know. That was worse. Joanne stayed until noon. Before leaving, she took the expired mustard from my refrigerator and dropped it in the trash. I was keeping that. It expired 18 months ago. It was symbolic. It was mustard. After she left, I stood over the trash can considering whether to retrieve it again. I let it go. At 1, I answered Allison. I'm not going to argue about what happened. Please return my roasting pan, silver server, linen napkins, and the key to my house. You can leave them on the porch. Her response came within seconds. What does my key have to do with anything? I typed, nothing. I would still like it returned. This is exactly what I mean. You turn one argument into a huge punishment. They are my things, Allison. So now I'm not allowed in your house? I had given her the key when I had knee surgery 4 years earlier. She used it occasionally to bring in packages or water plants, but more often she let herself in when she needed something. A platter, a suitcase, a blouse she remembered from 1998. She always called from inside the house to ask if she could borrow it. You are allowed in when I invite you, I wrote. The dots appeared, disappeared, and returned. I can't believe you're doing this. I put the phone in a drawer. It buzzed against the silverware for the next 10 minutes. At 3, someone knocked. I assumed Allison had ignored the porch instruction. I was ready for her, or believed I was. Graham stood outside holding the roasting pan. Inside it, he had stacked the folded napkins, the cake server, and 3 serving spoons I had not requested. A small envelope rested on top. Allison had work, he said. It's Sunday. She went into the office. Of course she did. Graham shifted the pan against his hip. Can I come in? I don't know. Did she send you to collect my television? He looked at the floor. I deserve that. No, you didn't. She did. I took the pan and set it on the hall table. The envelope contained my house key. No note. Your book is still there, Graham said. What book? Richard's present. I forgot it. Allison didn't know whether to send it back. It wasn't for her. I know. Did Richard open it? No. That hurt in a place I had not prepared to defend. Graham put his hands into the pockets of his sweatshirt. For what it's worth, I told her she was wrong. When? This morning. You knew yesterday. I knew she thought you might leave. I didn't know she was planning to ask you, what did you think would make me leave? He looked miserable. The same thing that usually makes you leave early. You'd say you were tired or that you had something to do at home. So you knew the lie. You just didn't know the method. That's fair. I'm not trying to be fair. I know. He sat on the porch step without being invited. It was too cold for that, but Graham had always treated discomfort as a kind of penance. I stayed in the doorway. He said, Allison's been trying to keep your dad coming to Sundays. My ex-husband. Her dad. Right. She thinks if Celeste feels like she's walking into your old marriage every week, they'll stop coming. So she made me the staff. I don't think she thought of it that way. Most people don't think of themselves as cruel while somebody is chopping their onions. He rubbed his palms together for warmth. I should have said something sooner. Yes, I'm sorry. I believe you. His face lifted slightly. That doesn't make it all right, I said. It dropped again. I handed him his wife's empty envelope. Tell Allison I'm not discussing this through you. I told her I wouldn't be a messenger. You arrived carrying a pan and a key. He looked at the envelope in his hand. Apparently, I need practice. For the rest of the week, Allison and I did not speak. That was not unusual in terms of time. We sometimes went 4 or 5 days without a call. What was unusual was the pressure inside the silence, as if every hour were an active decision. On Wednesday, Richard left a voicemail. I think everybody has made their point. It's time to move on. He did not specify what his point had been. Thursday evening, Lorraine texted to ask if I was coming Sunday. I stared at the question until the screen dimmed. Coming where? To dinner. Was I invited? She answered after several minutes. I assume so. I wrote, "Please don't assume for me." On Friday, Allison finally called. I let it ring twice before answering. "Are you coming Sunday?" she asked. "Did you invite me?" "You've never needed an invitation. That's not what you said in the pantry." She went quiet. "We aren't doing Dad's birthday every week," she said. "Sunday is different." "Different how?" "It's regular dinner." "Am I coming to eat or to work?" "Why are you talking like this?" "Because I didn't understand the arrangement before. There is no arrangement. Then you shouldn't have trouble answering." Her breath moved harshly across the receiver. "Fine. Come at 6. Eat dinner. Don't bring anything." The invitation sounded like a dare. I could have accepted. Part of me wanted to walk through the front door at 6 in my best clothes, carrying nothing, and sit while Allison performed all the work she had made invisible. I wanted Richard to notice the missing potatoes. I wanted Celeste to hand me flowers and watch me keep them. But showing up to prove I belonged meant the table still had the power to decide. "No," I said. "I won't be there. You're punishing me. I'm not coming to Sunday dinner. That is a punishment. It only feels that way because you expected me to come no matter how you treated me." She began to argue, then stopped. "What do you want from me?" she asked. It was the first honest question she had asked since the pantry. "I want you to understand what you did." I apologized for how I worded it. "No, you apologized because the words hurt me. You haven't apologized for meaning them. That's not fair." "Maybe not." "What am I supposed to tell everybody?" I looked at the roasting pan drying beside my sink. "Tell them dinner is at 6. Allison ended the call without saying goodbye. On Saturday morning, I drove to the grocery store and stood in front of the meat counter with my hand on a package of chicken thighs. Richard disliked dark meat. Allison claimed she didn't, but always ate it when I cut it off the bone and put it in soup. Graham liked anything covered in enough hot sauce to erase its identity. I placed the chicken in my cart. In produce, I picked up asparagus for Lorraine, lemons for Richard's water, and the little tomatoes Celeste once complimented. By the time I reached the cheese case, my cart contained the beginning of a meal for 7 people I had already told I would not feed. I pushed it into an empty aisle and began returning things. A stock clerk watched me place 3 onions beside the pasta. "Those don't go there," he said. "I'm having a personal crisis." He considered this, then took the onions from me. "I'll handle it." He couldn't have been more than 20, but he spoke with the exhausted authority of a man who had seen worse breakdowns in aisle 6. I left with chicken thighs, 1 potato, and a frozen dinner that pictured salmon beneath a sauce so glossy it looked laminated. Sunday afternoon moved badly. At 2, I started cleaning the oven. At 2:15, I remembered the oven cleaning cycle frightened me, turned it off, and opened every window. Cold air filled the house while a faint chemical smell suggested I had made a poor decision without accomplishing anything. At 3, I took out the chicken. At 3:10, I put it back. At 4, Allison called. I watched the phone ring on the counter. The instant it stopped, she called again. I answered. "What's wrong?" "Nothing's wrong." "Then why did you call twice?" "I thought maybe you were in the shower." "I'm not coming." "I know." Her voice was tight and distant. In the background, cabinet doors opened and closed. "Do you remember what temperature you do the roast at?" "You're making another roast." Dad asked for leftovers, but Dean took most of them home. Dean took the roast. He liked it. I'm glad someone enjoyed his surprise. Mom, I almost gave her the temperature. The number rose automatically to my tongue. Instead, I said, use the recipe I sent you. You never sent it, I offered. You said recipes don't work for you, so this is about teaching me a lesson. No, this is about you making dinner. I am making dinner. Then you'll figure it out. The cabinet banging stopped. You want me to fail. I want not to be responsible for whether you succeed. She inhaled sharply. It's a temperature. It's never just one temperature. Next you'll ask when to add the vegetables, then how much stock, then whether the potatoes can go in the same oven. Can they? I laughed before I could stop myself. Allison did too. It escaped her like a hiccup, and for 2 seconds we were ourselves. Then she said, $3.25? Goodbye, Allie, $3.50. I hung up smiling. The smile faded too slowly, which made it hurt more. At 5:30, I cooked the chicken thighs and the single potato. I seasoned both more heavily than Richard would have tolerated. The skin became crisp. The potato burned at one end and nobody complained. I carried my plate to the dining table rather than eating over the sink. Halfway through the meal, I realized I had set 7 napkins around the table while deciding which linens needed washing. 6 empty places looked back at me. I gathered the napkins and shoved them into a drawer. At 7, Lorraine called. I am not accepting a dinner report, I said. Good, because there's very little to report. Lorraine. What? I didn't say whether it was good or bad. You called at exactly the time you usually help Allison clear the table. Graham is clearing. Allison told me to sit down. That was kind of her. It didn't sound kind. I moved my plate aside. Did she tell you what happened? Not exactly. She said you're trying to force her to choose between you and Richard. I'm not asking her to choose anyone. I know. Do you? Lorraine went quiet. I could hear running water on her end and Graham saying something too far away to understand. Richard thinks you'll get over it, she said. That sounds like Richard. He said this is what you do. What do I do? You get upset and then you calm down and fix everything. The accuracy of it landed harder than an insult. Do you agree? No, she answered too quickly. Lorraine, you've watched me do that for years. What was I supposed to do? Get involved in your marriage? It stopped being my marriage 3 years ago. Family habits don't disappear because a judge signs something. I stared at my half-eaten potato. That's an interesting thing to say to someone who was told she isn't family. She sighed. Would you please tell me the exact words? I did. This time I didn't protect Allison from the sound of her own sentence. I repeated it slowly, exactly as she had said it. The water stopped running. Oh, Lorraine said. Yes. Did she apologize? For the wording. That girl always could pick the smallest corner of a mess and clean it until she thought the whole room was done. It was such a precise description of my daughter that I nearly smiled. Don't go after her, I said. I'm not going after anybody. You're sitting at her table. I'm in her kitchen. Same country. Lorraine lowered her voice. Richard heard me ask Graham why you weren't invited last Sunday. He said you were invited and chose to leave. He believes whatever requires the least from him. I know. Then why do you let him? The question stayed between us. Lorraine had defended me in parking lots, private phone calls, and restaurant bathrooms. Never at the table. She had made a life of disagreeing with Richard where he did not have to experience it. I should go, she said. Yes. I love you. I love you too. After the call, I sat until my chicken went cold. The doorbell rang the following afternoon while I was tightening a loose knob on one of my kitchen cabinets. For half a second, I assumed it was Graham arriving with another piece of my property. Celeste stood on the porch. She held Richard's wrapped book under one arm and the rosemary plant she had given me in both hands. I brought your things, she said. The book was Richard's. He wouldn't open it. I looked at the package. The paper was creased where someone had picked at a corner, but the tape remained intact. Why not? He said accepting it might encourage you. Encourage me to do what? He didn't specify. That usually means he hasn't decided yet. Celeste's mouth twitched. She wore a camel-colored coat and small gold earrings. Even on my porch in the middle of the afternoon, she looked prepared to meet someone important. I stepped aside. Come in. She entered carefully, as though my house might object. Her gaze moved over the living room. Richard had taken only what he wanted when he left. His clothes, his tools, 2 armchairs, the good television, and every bottle of liquor except a peach schnapps nobody remembered buying. He had left the bookshelves, photographs, and most of the furniture because he said Celeste's taste was cleaner. She placed the rosemary on my kitchen counter. You already have one, she said. That one has a history. It looks healthier than mine. Spite is an excellent fertilizer. She laughed, then covered it with a cough. I made coffee. Celeste asked for tea, so I found one of the historical artifacts Joanne had criticized. Celeste accepted it without inspection. We sat across from each other at the dining table. I owe you an apology, she said. You didn't tell me to leave. No, but I knew Allison worried about us being in the same room. Did you tell her you were uncomfortable? I told her the dinners sometimes felt strange. That's not an answer. Celeste wrapped both hands around her mug. I never asked her to exclude you. I didn't know she was doing that Sunday. But you were uncomfortable. Yes. The honesty surprised me more than a denial would have. With what? I asked. She looked toward the sideboard where a framed photograph of Allison and Graham stood beside one of Joanne and me. Richard sits at the head of the table. You cook his favorite food. Lorraine tells stories about things all of you did 20 years before I was there. If I bring a dish, no one eats it because they're waiting for whatever you made. Then Richard says something tastes like home. He said that Sunday. I heard. I didn't arrange for him to say it. I know. She looked tired suddenly. Not less polished, exactly. More like someone had turned down the light behind the polish. I spend those dinners feeling like a guest in a marriage that's supposedly over, she said. And I spend them feeling like the caterer at one that replaced it. That's fair. No, it isn't, but it may be true. Celeste sipped her tea and winced. The bag had probably expired before my divorce. I asked Richard if we could host sometimes, she said. He said Allison would be hurt. I suggested we skip a Sunday now and then. He said family was important to her. Family is usually important when someone else is preparing it. I thought you wanted to be there. So did I. She lowered her eyes. For the first time, I understood that Allison had not merely pushed me aside for Celeste. She had trapped all of us inside roles that kept Richard comfortable. I was the dependable former wife. Celeste was the gracious replacement. Richard got his potatoes and never had to acknowledge the cost of putting both women at the same table. Understanding it did not make me feel generous. Did you eat dinner yesterday? I asked. At home. You didn't go to Allison's? No. Why? Richard wanted to go. I told him I wasn't going to be used as the reason you were removed. The sentence carried more backbone than I had expected from her. What did he do? He went without me. That sounded exactly like him. Celeste set down her mug. Allison called afterward. She was angry. With you? She said I was making everything worse. Welcome to the club. She believes if the 4 of us can sit at one table, the divorce didn't damage the family. The 4 of us were never what damaged it. I know. I looked at her. She held my gaze, neither triumphant nor apologetic. Richard had married a woman who understood him. It was possible that was not the victory either of us had imagined. I pushed his unopened gift across the table. Take this back. He won't accept it. Then keep it. I don't read mysteries. Neither does he, apparently. Celeste stood, leaving the book where it was. At the door, she hesitated. I'm not asking you to forgive Allison because of me. Good. I just wanted you to know I didn't ask for your chair. After she left, I carried the rosemary plant to the dining room window. The 2 pots looked almost identical. One held a thick, stubborn plant that had survived too much water and my neglect. The other held tender green stems that bent toward the light before their roots had settled. I turned both pots so neither would grow crooked. The newer rosemary wilted overnight. I found it leaning dramatically toward the window as if Celeste had brought me an opera singer. I gave it water, moved it away from the cold glass, and was pinching off a damaged stem when Allison called. "Did Celeste come to your house?" "Good morning to you, too." "Did she?" "Yes." "Why?" "She brought the rosemary I left and your father's present." "What else?" "A warrant." We searched the basement. "Mom, I'm serious. So am I." "What are you accusing me of?" "I'm not accusing you. I'm asking what you talked about." "That sounds like something you should ask Celeste." "I did. She said it was private." A small, undignified part of me enjoyed that. Then I would respect her answer. "Did you tell her not to come Sunday?" "No. But she didn't come because of you. She didn't come because she didn't want to be used as your excuse." Allison inhaled. "She said that?" "Yes." "I was trying to make her comfortable. You never asked what would make her comfortable. I shouldn't have to conduct interviews before inviting my own family to dinner." "No. You could try listening when they speak, and you could try not making alliances behind my back. Celeste and I are not forming a government. You know what I mean." That phrase again. You know what I mean. It was the sentence people used when the meaning reflected badly on them. "She came here, Allison. I gave her bad tea. We discussed what happened. Did you tell her what I said?" "She already knew enough." "Graham had no right to tell her. Graham didn't. Then who did? Possibly the empty chair." Allison went silent. I could hear office sounds behind her, a printer running, a phone ringing somewhere, someone asking whether she had seen a purchase order. She had called from work because work gave her a reason to end conversations before they became dangerous. "I need to go," she said. "Then go. You've got everyone taking sides now. I haven't asked anyone to take a side. Lorraine called Dad and told him I humiliated you. Did you?" "I'm not doing this again. You haven't done it once." She ended the call. I set my phone beside the rosemary. The tender stems trembled from the movement of the table. Richard arrived that afternoon without calling. He stood on my porch wearing a rain jacket I had ordered for him during the last year of our marriage. He had claimed it made him look like a crossing guard, then taken it when he moved out. "I came for my book," he said. "It's on the dining table." He stepped forward. I did not move. His eyebrows rose. "May I come in?" The question was so unfamiliar in his mouth that it sounded foreign. I let him inside. He looked around with the casual appraisal of someone checking how his old belongings were getting along without him. When he saw the 2 rosemary plants in the window, he pointed. "Why do you need 2? I'm building an army. Celeste told me she came over." "That explains why you're here." "I came for the book. The book has been here since yesterday." "I didn't know that yesterday. You knew it existed on Sunday." Richard removed his jacket. He draped it over the chair instead of hanging it, a habit I used to correct by simply hanging it for him. I left it where it was. He picked up the gift and examined the wrapping. "You spent money on this. Nothing gets past you." I told Allison nobody needed to buy me gifts. "Did you?" "I probably did." He peeled the tape carefully. Richard opened presents as if the paper might be audited. When he saw the book, his face changed. "You found one." "Yes." He ran his thumb over the worn cloth cover and opened it to the title page. The note was tucked inside. "You still never see the ending coming." He laughed once through his nose. "I knew it was the doctor," he said. "You accused the hotel clerk for 200 pages. The doctor was my second choice. The doctor wasn't the murderer." He looked at me. "Then who was it? You've had 44 years to finish the book." "I finished it. You clearly didn't understand it." His smile arrived before he could prevent it. For an instant, he was 30 years old on a hotel balcony, sunburned and offended that I had solved the mystery first. Then he closed the book. "You shouldn't have left," he said. There it was. Richard could walk through any memory and find the nearest exit. I was told to. Allie says she never told you to leave. She told me I was no longer part of the family sitting down to eat. She said that group wasn't your family anymore. Technically, she's right. Technically? We're divorced, Elaine. I noticed. You can't expect everything to stay the same. I didn't. Allison did. That's why she kept calling me to reproduce everything exactly. Richard frowned. You like cooking. I also like gardening. That doesn't mean you can bury me in the yard. Now you're being dramatic. And you came here for a first edition you refused to open because you thought it might encourage me. His head lifted. Celeste told you that? She did. She shouldn't have. Was it true? He did not answer. I went to the kitchen. Out of habit, I almost asked if he wanted coffee. Instead, I poured myself a glass of water. He followed me. Allie is miserable, he said. That's unfortunate. You know how she gets when there's conflict. She creates a schedule and assigns the conflict to somebody else. She's trying to keep this family together. She removed me from it. One bad conversation doesn't erase 40 years. Then why did a divorce? He leaned against the counter and folded his arms. What do you want her to do? Understand what she did? She understands. She feels terrible. She feels accused. Isn't that enough? No. He shook his head. You always need people to say things exactly the right way. And you've always believed meaning doesn't count unless someone can prove you used the precise word. I didn't come here to fight. What did you come here for? He looked down at the book in his hand. I realized he truly did not know. Before leaving, he put on his rain jacket without noticing I had never hung it up. He carried the book beneath one arm. At the door, he said, "We missed you Sunday." The words caught me off guard. Did you? The gravy wasn't right. I laughed. I couldn't help it. Richard looked hurt, which made me laugh harder. I don't know why I bother, he said. That, I told him, is the first useful question you've asked. When he left, I locked the door behind him. The following Sunday, Joanne drove me to a diner halfway between our houses. I had declined twice. The first time, I said the weather looked bad, though the forecast showed clear skies. The second time, I said I needed to organize the linen closet. Joanne said, "If you choose towels over me, I'm putting you in assisted living." So at 1 o'clock, I sat across from her in a red vinyl booth beneath a framed photograph of a cow. The diner was loud and overheated. The coffee came in thick white mugs, and every menu item appeared to include cheese as a structural component. "This is nice," I said. "You look like you're waiting for dental work. I'm enjoying myself. Your shoulders are touching your earrings." I forced them down. At the next table, a woman turned around. Elaine Mercer? It took me a moment to recognize Marcy Bennett. We had worked together for 16 years at an insurance office, where she handled claims, and I supervised people who complained about claims. Marcy had retired 8 months after me. Her hair, once dark brown, was now a blunt silver bob that made her look both older and more expensive. Marcy. She slid out of her booth and hugged me before I could stand. "I thought you were dead," she said. "I sent you a Christmas card. People send Christmas cards for 1 year after a death. That isn't true. It should be. It would save postage." I introduced her to Joanne. Within 3 minutes, they were discussing whether the cow photograph looked judgmental. Marcy sat at the edge of our booth. "Where have you been?" she asked me. "I called you in March. Allison needed help repainting her dining room. You canceled lunch to paint?" "Not exactly. I had to meet the delivery people because she was at work." "And April?" "Richard's sister had surgery." "May?" I thought about it. Something happened. Something always happened. There was no accusation in her voice, which made the truth less comfortable. Marcy had invited me to concerts, lunch, a weekend trip to Vermont, and a disastrous pottery class she later described in 3 separate emails. I had answered warmly, promised another time, and then returned to whatever task Allison considered urgent. "I've been busy," I said. "With your life or theirs?" Joanne raised her coffee mug toward Marcy. "I like you." "No alliances," I warned. Marcy smiled. "I'm making soup next Sunday. You should both come." What kind? Joanne asked. Chicken and wild rice. Does it have kale? Not if I want people to eat it. I'm in. They looked at me. Next Sunday floated before me. The old pull toward Allison's side door, the empty afternoon, the moment at 6 when I would imagine them sitting down without me. I might have plans, I said. Joanne's mouth tightened. Marcy only shrugged. If you do those. The lack of pressure left me nowhere to hide. I don't have plans, I admitted. Then come at 4. Should I bring something? No, I could make bread. You could. Or dessert. You could do that too. What do you need? Marcy leaned closer. Elaine, I invited you. I didn't post a job opening. Joanne looked down at her menu, but I saw her smile. All right, I said. I'll come. My phone buzzed inside my purse. I knew it was Allison before I looked. Sunday, 2 o'clock. There would be a question about food, a missing object, or a relative whose mood required adjustment. I left the phone where it was. Marcy began telling us about the pottery class. Apparently her bowl had collapsed in the kiln and fused itself to the instructor's vase. The phone stopped buzzing. For the first time, I did not wonder what they needed long enough to miss the end of the story. The missed call had no voicemail. That bothered me more than a request would have. I checked twice while Joanne paid the bill, then once in the parking lot. Is the phone going to explain itself if you stare harder? She asked. Allison called. And nothing. Maybe she wanted to hear your voice. She would have left a message saying I ruined her weekend. Joanne unlocked her car. You know, you're allowed to call her back. I'm also allowed not to. Yes. She said it without approval or disapproval. I had expected boundary setting to feel like strength. Most of the time, it felt like standing in a doorway while everyone waited to see whether I would get tired and move. Allison called again the next morning. I need the blue serving bowl, she said. Good morning. I need the blue serving bowl. The ceramic one? Yes. For what? Do I have to submit a reason now? If you're borrowing something, it's customary to say what it's for. I'm having people over Thursday. Who? People from work. I pictured 12 adults standing in Allison's dining room while she carried my possessions among them. The bowl is in the cabinet under the sideboard. I know where it is. Then why are you calling? You took my key. I didn't take it. I asked you to return it, which means I have to drive over when you're home. That is generally how visiting works. The silence that followed was so complete, I heard the clock above my stove click to the next minute. I'll come after work, she said. I'm going out at 5. Where? To the hardware store. What do you need? A new cabinet knob. You're driving across town for a knob? I'm beginning to understand why these conversations exhaust you. She arrived at 4:30 wearing navy slacks and the flat black shoes she kept under her desk. Her hair was still pinned into the smooth knots she wore when she needed suppliers to believe late shipments were moral failures. I opened the door before she knocked. I can't stay, she said. I didn't ask you to. She entered anyway. The blue bowl was on the dining table. I had wrapped it in a bath towel and placed it inside a cardboard box. You didn't have to do all this. It chips. I know. You chipped it last time. That was Graham. Graham confessed because you were upset. Her mouth opened, then closed. Did he tell you that? He didn't need to. She lifted the bowl out of the box and examined the small white crescent on its rim. Are you charging me for that too? I haven't charged you for anything. It feels like you're keeping a list. There it was. The warehouse invoice I had refused to send was visible anyway. I sat at the table. Do you want coffee? Allison looked toward the kitchen as if she suspected the offer concealed terms. I can stay 10 minutes. I made coffee. She took hers with 1 spoonful of sugar, stirred exactly 4 times, and left the spoon on the saucer. Celeste had sat in the same chair days before. I wondered if furniture could grow tired of difficult women telling partial truths. Allison noticed the rosemary plants. Celeste's is already dying. It's adjusting. She shouldn't have come here. It was kind. It was intrusive. She rang the bell. That helped. Allison looked down at her coffee. "I'm sorry I kept your key," she said. "The apology was so unexpected I nearly interrupted it. I didn't think of it as your key," she continued. "I thought of it as the key. To my house." "I know. No, I don't think you did." She nodded once. For several seconds, we sat without fighting. It felt fragile enough that I was afraid to breathe directly on it. Then she said, "Graham told me you're having lunch with strangers on Sundays now. I had lunch with Joanne and a woman I worked with for 16 years. I know who Marcy is. Then why call her a stranger? You haven't spoken to her in years. That's changing." Allison pressed her lips together. "I called because we had roast left and I thought you might want some. The roast you made." "Yes. How was it?" "Dry." I smiled. $3.50? $3.75. Dad was late and I lost track. "What did he say?" "He said yours was more tender. He says mine is dry. He does not. He has since 1986. Allison looked offended on behalf of every roast she had eaten. "Why do you keep making it?" "Excellent question." She smiled into her coffee. I wanted to reach across the table and touch her wrist. Instead, I asked how work was. She told me one of her suppliers had shipped 600 left-handed wrist braces when she ordered 60 assorted. I asked how she knew they were left-handed. She demonstrated with her own arm, and soon we were laughing over the image of the sales representative, insisting hands were mostly interchangeable. It was easy. That was the danger. Easy could make me forget the pantry. Easy could persuade me that a cup of coffee and a joke were the same as repair. When her 10 minutes became 40, she stood. I should go. Take the bowl. She tucked the box against her hip. At the door, she said, "You know you can come Sunday. I have plans. Marcy's soup." "Yes." "You're choosing soup over your family. I'm choosing an invitation I accepted. We invited you. You dared me to come and do nothing. I was angry. So was I." She shifted the box. "Dad asked if you'd be there. What did you tell him?" "That I didn't know. Now you do." Her eyes hardened, but beneath it I saw something else. Not regret. Fear. The Sunday table was the one place she could arrange us into proof that she had not lost anything. Every absence ruined the picture. "I don't understand why you can't come for dinner and still be mad at me," she said. "Because you would call my presence forgiveness." "That's not true. You called my leaving punishment." She carried the blue bowl to her car. On Sunday, I arrived at Marcy's house at 3:52 with a loaf of bread hidden in my tote bag. Her house was a narrow brick bungalow with green shutters and a front garden composed mostly of plants that had ignored their assigned borders. Wind chimes made from old silverware clattered beside the door. Marcy opened it before I knocked. "You brought something." "No, the bag is shaped like bread. It's my purse. Your purse smells like yeast." I handed her the loaf. She inspected it. "Did making this cause you joy? I suppose. Then it's allowed." Joanne was already in the kitchen, chopping celery with the concentration of a surgeon. She pointed the knife at me. "Marcy owns only one cutting board." "I own two," Marcy said. "The other is decorative. It has a rooster on it. That doesn't make it decorative. It says cock-a-doodle-doo." I took off my coat. "What can I do?" "Sit," Marcy said. "I can chop. Joanne is chopping. I could set the table." "It's set." "What about the soup?" "It's soup, Elaine. It doesn't require a board meeting." I stood in the middle of the kitchen with my hands empty. Marcy opened a bottle of wine and poured me a glass. "Your assignment is to tell us something interesting. I don't perform on command. Then tell us something dull." I sat at the small round table. Marcy's chicken and wild rice soup was too salty. The rice had absorbed most of the broth, and the carrots were cut into pieces so different in size they could not have come from the same vegetable. My bread was still warm, though, and we used thick slices to push the heavy soup onto our spoons. Nobody apologized for the food. After dinner, Joanne told a story about accidentally attending a homeowners association meeting for a neighborhood where she did not live. Marcy confessed she had once pretended to be Canadian for an entire flight because the man beside her complained about Americans before asking where she was from. "Which province?" I asked. "Quebec. You don't speak French." He didn't either. At 6, my phone buzzed. I left it face down beside my plate. At 6:15, it buzzed again. Marcy reached for the wine. "Are you going to answer that?" "I don't know. Do whatever lets you stay in the room." It was such a simple standard that I had no idea how to apply it. I checked the screen. Allison had sent a photograph of the dining table, 6 places, no message. Richard sat at the head. Celeste was beside him. Lorraine and her boyfriend occupied one side, Allison and Graham the other. The blue bowl stood in the center, filled with salad. They were all smiling except Graham, who appeared to have noticed the picture was being taken half a second too late. I enlarged Allison's face. She looked beautiful and tired. "What is it?" Joanne asked. "A photograph." "Of what?" "Dinner." Joanne held out her hand. I locked the screen. "No, I wasn't going to break it. I know what you were going to do." Marcy cut another slice of bread. "Do you want to go home?" The question startled me. "No, then don't." She began gathering bowls. I stood to help, and she handed me one without ceremony. Joanne dried while Marcy washed, and I put things away in cabinets whose logic I did not understand. My phone remained on the table. By 7:30, I had not solved anything. Allison was still hurt. I was still angry. Richard was probably criticizing dessert, but I had spent an entire Sunday in a room where nobody needed me to prove I belonged by fixing the meal. When I got home, Allison had left a voicemail. Her voice sounded calmer than it had in weeks. "I'm not calling to ask you to do anything. I just wanted to tell you Lorraine brought a pecan pie, and Dad said it wasn't as good as yours. I told him to stop comparing everything to you if he wanted you gone when it was convenient." I sat on the edge of my bed and played that part again. Then the message continued. "Thanksgiving is in 3 weeks. I know things are still weird, but everybody assumes we're doing it here. I need to know what you're planning." I deleted the message, then immediately regretted it. The phone offered no way to retrieve only the first half. I called Allison the next morning before I could invent a reason not to. She answered on the 4th ring. "Hi, your message was cut off. It was a lie, and not a good one." Allison knew phones. Which part? The beginning. "What did you hear?" "Thanksgiving." "Oh, I also heard what you said to your father." She went quiet. "Thank you," I said. "I wasn't defending you. I didn't say you were. He was being rude to Lorraine. Your father believes comparisons are compliments as long as the person he insults isn't present. He said your pie had more filling. Lorraine's pie probably had the correct amount. It did." We both smiled. I could hear hers. Then she said, "So what are you planning for Thanksgiving?" "I don't know yet." "Mom." "What?" "You always make Thanksgiving. I always help make Thanksgiving. You make the turkey, and the stuffing, and the sweet potatoes, cranberry sauce, gravy, rolls, and pie. You usually make the salad." She did not laugh. "I've already told everybody it's at our house," she said. "Dad and Celeste are coming, Lorraine and Paul. Dean might come if his girlfriend works." Paul was Lorraine's current boyfriend, a retired dentist who had become fascinated with woodworking despite lacking depth perception. Dean's girlfriend was a respiratory therapist who worked every holiday by choice, possibly to avoid Dean. That sounds nice. It will be if we can stop pretending I'm asking a random question. "What are you asking?" "I'm asking what you'll make." "Nothing." A chair scraped on her end. "What do you mean, nothing?" "I mean, I'm not cooking Thanksgiving dinner." "Because of Sunday?" "Because of what happened. Thanksgiving is not Dad's birthday. It is still a family meal. You are family. You weren't confused about that when you needed 7 dishes. Here we go. No, I'm not going anywhere with this. You asked. I answered. You can't cancel Thanksgiving 3 weeks before Thanksgiving. I didn't cancel it. You've invited everyone. It's happening. You know what I mean. I know what you rely on me to mean." A man's voice spoke in the background. Allison covered the phone, answered him, then returned sounding lower and angrier. "I'm at work. You called me. I thought this would take 2 minutes, because you thought I'd say yes, because you always make Thanksgiving, and until recently I always assumed I would be allowed to eat it. That was one dinner. It was one sentence. It described years. I have to go. Go." She ended the call. At 11:30, she was at my door. She had driven from the office without her coat. Fine rain darkened the shoulders of her blouse, and loose strands of hair clung to her cheeks. "You can't do this over the phone," she said. I did. She walked past me, rubbing rain from her arms. "Do you have a towel?" I handed her one from the hall closet. "This is decorative," she said. "It absorbs water. It has embroidered leaves. Try not to damage them." She dried her hair with angry, careful movements. I led her into the kitchen. The younger Rosemary had begun recovering. Allison glared at it as though Celeste had planted surveillance equipment. "Coffee?" I asked. "No. Tea? No. You came all this way to refuse beverages?" "I came because you're making a point with Thanksgiving. I'm declining to work. You aren't an employee. Employees are invited to the holiday party. That's exactly the kind of thing I mean. You keep choosing the most insulting interpretation. You told me I wasn't part of the family whose dinner I prepared. I was overwhelmed. You were honest. I was angry. You were honest." She threw the damp towel onto the counter. It slid into the sink. "Traditions don't belong to one person," she said. "You can't take Thanksgiving away because you're hurt. I'm not taking anything. The turkey is in every grocery store in America. You know Dad won't eat stuffing from a box. Then he can make it." She stared at me. I laughed. "All right, that was cruel. He doesn't know how. He owns spoons. It won't taste the same." "No, it won't." The admission quieted us. Allison sat at the kitchen table. Rain moved against the window in thin diagonal lines. "When I was 23, she said, you told me family means showing up even when it's hard. I remember. You said people who only come when it's easy aren't family. I said that after you skipped Lorraine's surgery because you and Graham had concert tickets. I sold the tickets. Yes. So why doesn't that apply to you?" It was an intelligent question, which made it more dangerous. I sat across from her. Showing up was never supposed to mean accepting whatever treatment is offered. You aren't accepting it. You made your point. This is not a protest where I wait for you to surrender. I'm changing what I'm willing to do. You're punishing all of us. I will not do family work in a room where I'm family only when the work needs doing. That isn't what happened. It is exactly what happened. She looked away. "Everybody will blame me." "Is that why you want me there?" "No." "Then why?" "Because you're my mother." That was true in the pantry. Her eyes filled. This time, I did not rush to soften the moment. "I'm sorry," she said. "For what?" "For saying it." "What did you mean?" She pressed her lips together. The kitchen clock ticked behind me. The refrigerator started its low hum. "I meant that Dad had moved on," she said finally, "that Celeste was his wife and you couldn't keep acting like nothing changed. What was I doing that acted like nothing changed? You cooked his food. You told stories with Lorraine. You corrected him. You knew where everything was. At your house. You know what I mean. No. I knew where the gravy strainer was because I bought it." She stood abruptly. "I can't talk to you when you're like this." "Like what?" "Determined to make every answer wrong." "I'm waiting for the answer that's true. I told you the truth. You told me what Celeste's presence meant. You haven't told me why it meant I had to leave." Allison picked up the towel from the sink and hung it over the oven handle. She smoothed the embroidered leaves flat. "Because Dad would still come if you weren't there," she said. The words were quiet. I did not move. She continued before courage abandoned her. "If Celeste stopped coming because of you, Dad would choose her. If you got upset, I thought you'd forgive me eventually. You always do." Rain tapped the window. There it was. Not cruelty for pleasure. Arithmetic. You chose the person whose love you were afraid to lose, I said. She nodded without looking at me. And you spent mine. Her face folded. I wanted to hold her. My body leaned forward before my mind stopped it. She saw the movement, and for an awful second, we both knew I had almost rescued her from the pain of admitting what she did. I didn't think of it that way, she whispered. No, you didn't think of me at all. That's not fair. Maybe not. You say that whenever you're being unfair. I learned it from your father. She made a broken sound that might have become a laugh in another room. I reached for the tissue box and pushed it across the table. She took one. I don't know how to fix this, she said. Start by not asking me to cook Thanksgiving. She wiped beneath her eyes. So you're definitely not coming. I didn't say that. Her head lifted. You haven't invited me, I said. You've assigned me a menu. Fine. You're invited. As a guest? Yes. Who is cooking? Her expression answered. No, I said. I can't do the whole thing alone. Graham can help. He works Wednesday, so do millions of people who eat Thursday. Dad will complain. Your father complains when I cook. Exactly. Imagine what he'll do to me. There was something so plaintive in her voice that I nearly laughed again. Instead, I said, You could tell him not to come. Her surprise was almost childlike, though there was nothing childish about the problem. I can't do that. You can. You don't want to. He's my father, and I'm your mother. That's different. Yes, I said, that is the entire problem. She left without coffee. At the door, she asked what I was going to do for Thanksgiving. I haven't decided. Joanne's? Maybe. She hates turkey. She hates dry turkey. She says all turkey is dry. Joanne has many opinions. Allison nodded, staring past me toward the street. I do want you there, she said. Wanting me there and wanting what I do are tangled up for you. I can want both. You can. But this year, you only get me. She looked at me then. I don't know if I can do that. I know. After she drove away, I found the decorative towel hanging neatly from the oven handle. I folded it and returned it to the hall closet. That afternoon, I gave Joanne the news. You said no? She asked. I said I wouldn't cook. What did she say? That I was taking Thanksgiving away from everybody. Good. I've wanted it gone for years. You don't mean that. Turkey is a punishment disguised as protein. What are you doing Thursday? I assumed I'd come here. I stared at the phone. You did? Yes, I haven't invited you. I'm your sister. Apparently, we've stopped requiring invitations. That isn't funny. It's a little funny. She softened. Marcy's going to her cousin's. Paul has Lorraine's thing. Come to my place. We'll order Chinese food. On Thanksgiving, turkeys will rejoice. I hesitated. I had never spent Thanksgiving without roasting something. Even during the divorce, I had cooked at Allison's house while Richard and Celeste came through the front door with wine. Let me think. Think quickly. The restaurant needs orders by Tuesday. The following Sunday, Lorraine asked for my stuffing recipe. She called from Allison's kitchen. I could hear drawers opening and Graham swearing quietly at something mechanical. Why don't you ask Allison? I said. She told me to ask you. Of course she did. Elaine, I am not entering the war. I just need to know how much sage. It isn't a war. Fine. The emotionally complicated herb shortage. I gave her the recipe. All of it, including the details I usually left out. Dry the bread for 2 days. Cook the celery until translucent, but not soft. Use more stock than seems reasonable, and never trust packaged sage after October. Lorraine wrote everything down. Will you be there? She asked. I don't know, I hope so. Would you still hope so if I brought nothing? I prefer wine. Lorraine. Yes, I would. On Tuesday, I called Joanne. Order enough for 2, I said. She was quiet long enough for me to hear what she did not say. Then she asked, Egg rolls? 2 each. Now it's Thanksgiving. By Wednesday evening, my kitchen felt unnaturally clean. There were no loaves drying on baking sheets, no turkey taking up half the refrigerator, no handwritten schedule taped inside a cabinet door. I had not bought celery. I had not called Lorraine to remind her that Richard hated whole cranberries, but would eat the same cranberries if they were crushed enough to become unrecognizable. At 9, I took down the roasting pan and checked it for dust. Then I put it back. Thanksgiving morning, I woke at 5:12 without an alarm. For several minutes, I lay beneath the covers, listening to the heat click on. My body insisted I was late. By now, the turkey should have been on the counter. Butter should have been softening. The first argument of the day should have begun over whether Richard had moved the carving knife. I got up and made toast. At 6:40, Allison texted, "Do you thaw the turkey in the sink at the end or just leave it in the refrigerator?" I stared at the message. How frozen is it? She sent a photograph of a 22-pound turkey on her kitchen counter. It was still sealed in plastic and looked capable of damaging a floor. "Hard in the center," she wrote. "You need cold water. Keep it wrapped. Change the water every 30 minutes. I added, "This is a food safety answer, not Thanksgiving participation." Her reply was immediate. Understood. At 7:15, she asked whether the stuffing could go inside a partly frozen turkey. No. At 7:40, she sent a photograph of Graham holding the bird beneath the kitchen faucet while wearing yellow dishwashing gloves. He looked as if he were trying to save it from drowning. I laughed despite myself. At 8, Joanne called. "You're helping her. I am preventing food poisoning. Nature has its own boundaries. I'm hanging up. Wear something loose. I ordered too much." The Chinese restaurant had given Joanne a pickup time of 1:30. I reached her house at noon carrying 2 bottles of wine and a pecan pie from a bakery. She inspected the pie. I thought we rejected tradition. We rejected turkey. I rejected turkey. You had an emotional separation. Her dining table was set with her good china, red cloth napkins, and the ceramic Pilgrim salt and pepper shakers she had mocked every year since buying them. You put out the Pilgrims. They came with the salt. They're decorative. One has pepper. The smell of furniture polish hung in the dining room. Joanne had cleaned for me, though she would rather have swallowed one of the ceramic Pilgrims than admit it. At 12:20, Allison called. I took the phone into the hallway. "Dad changed his mind," she said. "About what?" "They're coming at 3 instead of 4. Is dinner ready?" "No." "The turkey went in at 11:30. Then tell him dinner is still at 4. He says Celeste wants to eat earlier." "Did Celeste say that?" "No, Dad did." "Ask Celeste." "I did. She said she doesn't care and doesn't want to be put in the middle." Wise woman. "Mom, I need an answer. I gave you one. If they come at 3, what do I serve?" "Wine." "He'll complain." "That also requires no preparation. Can you be serious?" "I am serious. You are hosting. You decide when dinner is served. He's my father." The phrase irritated me more each time she used it, as though fatherhood were a dietary restriction everyone else had to accommodate. "And you're an adult with an oven," I said. She exhaled. "Fine. Fine. Are you at Aunt Joanne's?" "Yes." "Did you make pie?" "I bought one." There was silence. "You bought a pie?" The bakery seemed willing to sell it. "I'm just surprised. So am I. Someone called Allison's name." "I have to go," she said. "Happy Thanksgiving. You too." She did not sound angry. She sounded busy, which was how she had sounded through most of her adult life. Joanne drove us to the restaurant because she claimed my car smelled like rosemary. The parking lot was full. People crowded beneath the red awning, clutching numbered receipts and looking betrayed that other families had also failed to cook. Inside, the hostess stood behind a fortress of white paper bags. A man near the door announced that he had been waiting 40 minutes. "So have the rest of us," Joanne told him. "I wasn't speaking to you. You were speaking to the room." I steered her toward the far wall before she could create an international incident over lo mein. Our order was not ready. We stood between a plastic ficus and an aquarium containing one large fish that seemed disappointed in humanity. My phone buzzed. "The turkey is browning too fast. Put foil over the breast. I know you said you're not participating, but I don't know where your gravy strainer is. At your house or mine?" "Yours." "Then use a regular strainer. It has holes." That is the defining characteristic. Joanne leaned over my shoulder. Tell her to pour it through a Pilgrim. Stop reading. At 1:50, the restaurant employee called Joanne's name. We left carrying enough food to supply a modest office. We spread the cartons across her dining table. Orange chicken, beef with broccoli, shrimp fried rice, egg rolls, dumplings, and a vegetable dish Joanne insisted she had not ordered. We need something green, I said. There's broccoli. It's coated in sauce. That's how vegetables become food. We filled our plates. For the first few minutes, I kept glancing at the clock. At 3, Richard and Celeste would arrive at Allison's. At 3:15, Richard would begin lifting pot lids. At 3:30, Lorraine would ask if she could help after most of the work was done. My phone remained quiet. Joanne raised her wine glass. To abandoning poultry. To disappointing people. That too. We drank. The meal was warm, salty, and entirely wrong. I loved it more than I wanted to. Halfway through, Joanne said, "Do you remember the Thanksgiving Mom forgot to turn on the oven?" She didn't forget. The pilot light went out. She forgot to check. She cried in the bathroom. You made turkey sandwiches from deli meat and told everybody it was intentional. I was 26. You were already doing it. Doing what? Saving the day before anyone asked. I set down my fork. You're becoming irritatingly insightful. It's the orange sauce. I looked at the ceramic Pilgrim beside my plate. Its painted smile was slightly crooked. Who would I have been if I hadn't? I asked. My sister. That isn't a job. It wasn't supposed to be. I did not answer. At 4:10, my phone buzzed. Lorraine had sent a photograph of the table. The turkey was darker on one side. The stuffing occupied a casserole dish I recognized as Allison's, not mine. The blue serving bowl held cranberries instead of salad. Graham stood behind his chair, still wearing an apron. Celeste had brought a dish of roasted vegetables. Richard was looking at the turkey rather than the camera. Allison stood at the edge of the photograph with one hand on the back of an empty chair. Her blouse had a wet mark near the waist. Lorraine's message said, "Nobody died. Stuffing is good. Miss you." I showed Joanne. "That turkey looks fine," she said. "It's uneven. So was your marriage. You kept that 41 years. I took the phone back. At 5:30, Allison called. I let it ring. At 5:32, she called again. Joanne reached for the wine bottle. "Do whatever lets you stay in the room." She had stolen Marcy's line and said it badly enough to make me smile. I silenced the phone. We ate pie at 6. The bakery had used too much corn syrup, and the crust collapsed when I cut it. Joanne took a second piece. At 7, we packed leftovers into containers. She gave me all the vegetable dish because neither of us had touched it. "You could stay," she said, "and watch you fall asleep during the weather. It's tradition. I'm going home." The rain had stopped. Cold air sharpened the smell of wet pavement, and porch lights glowed along the street. When I turned into my driveway, Allison was sitting on my front step. She stood slowly. "What are you doing here?" "I was waiting. You could have called." I did. She wore the same blouse from Lorraine's picture, now wrinkled and spotted with gravy. Her hair had escaped its knot completely. She looked less like a woman returning from a holiday meal than someone who had wrestled an appliance. I unlocked the door. Inside, she put a foil-covered plate on my kitchen counter. "I brought you food. I have 6 pounds of Chinese leftovers." "Of course you do." She took off her coat but did not sit. "How was it?" I asked. "The turkey was fine. Fine is a triumph. Dad said it was dry. Your father says all turkey is dry. He asked why we didn't have the rolls you make. What did you say?" I told him because the person who makes them wasn't there. I set down my purse. Celeste told him to stop. Good. Then he asked why her vegetables had vinegar. Did they? Yes, they were good. That sounds good. He didn't think so. That also sounds familiar. Allison laughed, but her face tightened immediately afterward. "Lorraine's stuffing was good," she said. "Paul kept telling her yours had more sage. Dean asked where the sweet potatoes were while I was carrying them to the table. Nobody offered to carve the turkey until Graham did it wrong, and then everyone had advice. How do you carve it wrong? Apparently from 6 directions. I smiled. She sat at the table. I spent the whole day trying to make it feel the way it always feels, she said, and everyone kept telling me how you do it. I did not say anything. I thought they missed the food, she continued. Maybe they did. But it was more than that. Nobody knew when anything happened. Dad kept asking me questions. Lorraine brought the stuffing but didn't know where to put it, and I kept waiting for someone to notice the trash or fill the water glasses. They usually don't. I noticed. Her hands rested flat on the table. A small burn marked the side of her left wrist. Graham helped, she said. He did almost everything I asked. That sounds like Graham. I had to ask. Yes. She looked toward my empty dining room. Why did you do all of it for so long? Because it needed doing. No, that's what I kept telling myself today. I pulled out the chair across from her. Because if everyone needed me, I knew where I belonged. Allison studied my face. I think I learned that from you, she said. The words stung even though they were not meant as blame. Maybe. But I didn't make you feel needed. I made you useful. I looked down at her burned wrist. You did. She swallowed. I'm sorry. For what? Her exhaustion changed into frustration. Can't you accept it once without making me pass a test? I need to know what you're apologizing for. Today was awful. That's not an apology. I know. She stood too quickly, knocking her chair against the table. I came here because I thought you'd understand. I do understand. No, you want me to say it the perfect way. I want you to say it without making your difficult day the reason I deserve an apology. She picked up her coat. At the door, she turned. I didn't ask you to come fix it. You came after it was over. That was me trying. I know. Neither of us knew what to do with that. After she left, I uncovered the plate. There was turkey, stuffing, sweet potatoes, Celeste's vinegary vegetables, and 1 crushed dinner roll from a package. I ate the vegetables cold over the sink. They were very good. The next morning, I sent Allison a message. Put antibiotic ointment on that burn. She answered 10 minutes later. Already did. I almost added, and cover it if you're cooking. Instead, I put the phone down. Graham called while I was scraping sweet potatoes from her plate into a storage container. Did you get the food? He asked. I did. She packed it herself. I assumed you didn't forge the turkey. He laughed weakly. How is she? I asked. Tired. That isn't what I meant. I know. Water ran on his end. He was probably cleaning the remains of Thanksgiving while Allison slept or sat at her office answering emails no one had sent. She thinks she made everything worse, he said. She tried to apologize because dinner was difficult. She was trying to say more than that. Then she needs to say more than that. Elaine, no. You don't get to translate her into a better person. It isn't fair to either of you. The water stopped. That's what she said. What? That I keep trying to make things easier instead of letting her live with them. Your wife may be exhausted, but she isn't stupid. She's definitely not stupid. There was tenderness in his voice. Graham's loyalty to Allison was often expressed in private, where she could not use it. I should let you go, he said. Thank you for helping her yesterday. I live here, so do the dishes. Apparently, that didn't motivate anyone else. He laughed for real that time. Before we hung up, he said, The turkey wasn't that dry. Don't tell Richard. He needs his suffering. Richard's contribution to the weekend came as a voicemail. I hope you're satisfied. Allison worked herself sick trying to prove some point to you. Families are supposed to put disagreements aside for holidays. He had managed to make my absence both selfish and a powerful, controlling force. I saved the voicemail because deleting it felt too much like answering. Lorraine came over Saturday carrying a tin of stuffing. I made too much, she said. You made the amount I told you to make. Yes, but you usually send half of it home with people so it disappears. She placed the tin on my counter. Her hair was wrapped in a patterned scarf, and she wore the long gray cardigan I had given her before the divorce. We had both continued wearing things from that marriage. Apparently, fabric did not recognize legal boundaries. How was Paul? I asked. He tried to carve the turkey after Graham. With his depth perception, he stabbed the serving platter. Is the platter all right? The platter is traumatized. I made tea. Lorraine accepted the same expired bags that had offended Celeste and added enough honey to preserve herself. She sat at my kitchen table and looked toward the rosemary plants. I owe you an apology, she said. This house is becoming very popular with guilty women. I'm not guilty. Then never begin with an apology. It confuses people. She pulled the scarf from her hair and folded it on her lap. I should have said something that night. Yes. I didn't know what Allison said. You knew I left. You said you were tired. I also left without my purse once at your house because I had a migraine. You followed me outside and made me sit down before driving. That was different. How? You look sick. I was wearing lipstick this time? Lorraine smiled despite herself. I thought if you wanted us to know, you'd tell us. I was standing in a room full of people who were willing not to know. The smile faded. She looked down at the stuffing tin. Richard was angry with me after I called him. For saying I was humiliated? For telling him to stop pretending he didn't understand. Did he? No. He said Allison had mishandled it, but you were using her mistake to disrupt the whole family. Your brother has always confused consequences with sabotage. I told him that. To his face, I was on the phone. Progress. She gave me a look. Then she said, I'm not going to Sunday dinner tomorrow. Because of me? Because Paul and I are going to a woodworking show. Is it safe for him to operate tools? He mostly buys wood and tells people what he plans to make. That seems safer. She wrapped both hands around her mug. I should have invited you somewhere after the divorce, she said. Not just lunch, holidays, my house. Something that didn't belong to Richard first. We were both trying not to choose sides. I chose his every time I stayed quiet. There was no defense in her voice. I reached across the table and touched her hand. I don't want you to abandon Allison. I'm not. Good. But I may abandon her potatoes. That's between you and God. After Lorraine left, I stood at the dining table and imagined 3 bowls of chicken soup. It was technically Marcy's turn to host, though no one had established turns. She had invited us the previous Sunday, and I had spent most of the meal resisting the urge to repair her carrots. I called her. What are you doing tomorrow? I asked. Laundry and a documentary about a woman who married a bridge. Come to dinner. Is the bridge invited? 4 o'clock? Should I bring something? No. Interesting. What? Nothing. I enjoy hearing personal growth in real time. I called Joanne next. I'm making dinner tomorrow. What kind? Chicken stew. Is it turkey? It's chicken. Birds are birds. Come or don't. I'll come. What should I bring? Nothing. I don't like that answer. Now you know how I felt. On Sunday morning, I made biscuits. This was not necessary. The stew needed no biscuits, especially since I had also bought a loaf of bread, but my hands wanted flour. I told myself I enjoyed baking, which was true. I did not tell myself that 3 people required 24 biscuits. At noon, I chopped onions and carrots. At 1, I decided the dining room curtains looked dusty and took them down. At 1:30, I was standing on a chair rehanging damp curtains when my phone rang. Marcy said, "What are you doing?" "Nothing. Are you cleaning?" "No." Something clattered behind me. "What was that?" she asked. "A curtain rod." "Elaine?" I noticed dust. "Put the curtains down." "They're already down. Then leave them there. We've seen windows." I laughed and climbed off the chair. At 3, the stew was done. The table was set for 3. I stood in the dining room holding a 4th plate. There was no reason for it. Habit had simply carried the plate from the cabinet to my hand. I returned it. At 3:30, the doorbell rang. Allison stood outside holding the blue serving bowl in its cardboard box. "I thought I'd bring this back. You could have kept it longer. You asked for your things." "I asked for the things already here. I didn't want you thinking I was keeping it." She stepped inside. The smell of stew moved through the hallway. "You're having people over," she said. "Marcy and Joanne. Sunday dinner. Dinner on Sunday." She followed me into the dining room. Her eyes moved over the 3 places, the bread basket, the butter dish, and the vase of grocery store daisies I had bought because the table looked bare. "You made biscuits." "I like biscuits." "I know." She set the box on the sideboard. It occupied the space where Richard's book had been. "What are you doing tonight?" I asked. "Dad and Celeste are coming over." "Celeste, too?" "Yes." "That's good." "Is it?" "I don't know." Allison ran one finger along the edge of the cardboard box. "Lorraine isn't coming. She has a woodworking thing. I heard. Dean has plans. It's just the 4 of us. That might be easier. Dad said everyone's making separate plans because you turned Sunday into a loyalty test. Your father is welcome to think that. He said if you were really hurt, you would come talk to him instead of making everybody else uncomfortable. I talked to him." "When?" "When he came for his birthday present." Allison looked surprised. "He came here?" "Yes. He didn't tell me." "Perhaps he didn't want to encourage you." She almost smiled. Then she looked at the table again. "You replaced us quickly." "No. You've got the same meal the same time. It isn't the same meal. You know what I mean. I am having 2 people over for stew on Sunday. Sunday still exists even when I'm not cooking for you. I didn't say it didn't. You sound hurt. I'm not hurt, Allie." Her expression changed at the name. She turned toward the front room, and for a moment I thought she would leave. Instead, she sat in one of the dining chairs. "Was I ever allowed to come?" she asked. "I didn't think you'd want to." "You didn't ask." "No. So I have to invite you, but you don't have to invite me. It was not an entirely unfair accusation. This dinner isn't a statement about you. That's what you keep saying about everything. I'm trying to build a life that doesn't wait beside the phone for you to need something." Her face closed. "I need you. That isn't the same as making room for me." The doorbell rang. Allison stood. "You can stay," I said. "You have 3 places. I own more plates." She looked toward the hallway where Joanne's voice called, "If nobody's dead, open the door." Allison picked up her purse. "Dad's expecting us. You could come another time." "Sure." The word had no faith in it. I followed her to the door. Marcy stood on the porch beside Joanne, holding a bottle of wine. Both women went quiet when they saw Allison. "Hi, honey," Joanne said. "Hi." Marcy smiled. "Good to see you again. You too." Allison hugged Joanne, nodded to Marcy, and left. I watched her drive away. Behind me, Joanne said, "Should I follow her?" "No." "Should you?" "No." Marcy handed me the wine. "Are we staying?" I looked at the 3 of us framed in my doorway. Yes. Dinner did not go well. The stew had thickened too much. The biscuits were dry because I had left them in the oven while Allison was there. Joanne brought up Richard twice, and Marcy told her to stop twice. I drank wine too quickly and became convinced everyone was speaking with unnatural care. Halfway through, I said, "She thought I replaced her." Marcy put down her spoon. "Did you?" "No." "Then why do you look guilty?" "Because I didn't invite her." "Did you want her here?" "I don't know. That's allowed." Joanne buttered a biscuit. "She would have spent the whole meal checking whether you were angry." "So did I." "Yes, but it's your house. You can ruin your own dinner." Marcy raised her glass. A beautiful rule. At 8, after they left, I found Allison's empty cardboard box still on the sideboard. The blue bowl sat inside, washed and wrapped in a clean bath towel that was not mine. My phone buzzed. Dinner was terrible, Allison had written. I waited. Another message arrived. Dad complained that you invited Aunt Joanne but not him. Celeste told him to eat his potatoes. I smiled. Then a third message appeared. I was jealous when I saw your table. I know that isn't fair. I sat in the chair she had occupied. I wrote, I was glad you came. Her answer took several minutes. Me too. I carried the 4th plate from the cabinet and set it beside the sink. Then I put it away again. Not because Allison did not belong at my table, but because I wanted the next place I made for her to be an invitation, not an expectation. The next message came Tuesday afternoon. Coffee Thursday? No bowls involved. I read it while standing in the hardware store, holding two nearly identical cabinet knobs. One cost $4 more because the package described it as artisanal. I had no idea what an artisanal knob did that an ordinary knob could not. Where? I wrote. She named a cafe near her office. What time? Her answer came immediately. Whenever works for you. It was a small sentence. I stood between cabinet hardware and weather stripping longer than necessary, looking at it. 2:00, I wrote. I bought the cheaper knob. On Thursday, Allison was already at the cafe when I arrived. She had chosen a table beside the window and ordered my coffee correctly. No flavored syrup, room for cream, sugar on the side. I wasn't sure if you still took one packet, she said. I do. Good. She pushed the paper packet toward me as though completing a difficult assignment. Outside, people hurried along the sidewalk with shopping bags and winter coats. The cafe had begun playing Christmas music loud enough to make every conversation feel slightly desperate. How's your burn? I asked. Healed. Let me see. She held up her wrist, a pink mark curved beside the bone. That may scar. I'll survive. I didn't say you wouldn't. We added cream to our coffee. Allison had ordered a muffin but had not touched it. How is Marcy? She asked. Opinionated. So you like her, apparently, and Aunt Joanne? Also opinionated. Nothing new there. The conversation stalled. At another table, a man conducted a video meeting without headphones. He was explaining quarterly targets to the entire cafe while pretending to speak only to the people on his laptop. Allison peeled the paper from her muffin. I'm sorry I came over without calling Sunday. You rang the bell. You're never going to let that go, are you? Probably not. I almost used the side door. It was locked. I know. Her fingers stopped on the muffin wrapper. That felt strange. It was strange for me, too. I didn't think about how often I just walked into your house. You thought about it when you couldn't. She nodded. I was jealous, she said. I shouldn't have been. You already told me. I know. I'm saying it out loud. That's harder. Yes. The honesty in that single word made me put down my cup. She tore off a piece of muffin and crumbled it between her fingers. When you stopped coming, I thought you were sitting home waiting for me to apologize. I did some of that. Then you had lunch with Marcy and dinner and Thanksgiving at Aunt Joanne's. It felt like you were proving you didn't need us. I was proving it to myself. That isn't much better. It isn't supposed to be better for you. Her mouth tightened. You see? That. You say you're not punishing me, but everything has an edge. I'm angry, I know. Anger doesn't become invalid because I've had it for several weeks. I didn't say it did. No, you keep waiting for it to expire. She looked toward the window. The video meeting man announced that accountability had to flow both ways. Allison and I both turned toward him. He's mocking us, she said. He should buy headphones. We smiled, then grew serious again. I don't want every conversation to be about the pantry, she said. Neither do I. But if we talk about normal things, you think I'm avoiding it. Sometimes you are. Sometimes I just miss you. The words reached me before I could prepare an answer. I folded the empty sugar packet into smaller and smaller rectangles. I miss you too, I said. She wiped crumbs from the table. What do we do with that? I don't know. I thought you always knew. That may be part of the problem. She looked up. I told her about the cabinet knob. It was not important, which was precisely why I told her. I explained that one hinge had been loose, then the knob had cracked when I tightened it. I complained about the artisanal option. Allison said $4 was a reasonable price for artistic integrity. Did you buy one? She asked. It's in my purse. Let me see, I showed her. That's the wrong size. It's a cabinet knob. The base is wider than the mark on the door. It won't sit flat. How do you know? I helped Graham replace all ours. You told me the contractor did it. Graham likes to be called a contractor when he owns a drill. She put the knob back in its package. Come on, she said. Where? We'll exchange it. I don't need help. I know. It was the first time she had offered something without claiming I did. We drove separately to the hardware store. In the cabinet aisle, Allison held different knobs against a photograph of the cupboard door on my phone. She rejected mine, 2 decorative brass ones and a square black knob that looked like it belonged on a small coffin. This, she said, choosing a plain brushed nickel one. It costs $6. You spent more on coffee. You bought the coffee. Exactly. You can afford the knob. At the register, she paid before I could stop her. This is not a gift, she said. It's compensation for the blue bull chip. Graham did that. No, he didn't. I knew it. She laughed. In the parking lot, snow began falling in thin, dry flakes that disappeared on the pavement. I don't know what to ask you, Allison said. About what? Your life. The question was so broad, I almost dismissed it. What do you want to know? She tucked her hands into her coat pockets. What do you do all day? I'm retired, not deceased. You know what I mean. I read. I work in the yard. I see Joanne. I avoid exercise. Were you lonely before all this? I looked toward the cart return, where a man was attempting to force a large cart into the row of small carts. Yes. Why didn't you tell me? I did. When? Every time I asked you to stay for coffee and you said you were busy. Every time I suggested we go somewhere and you asked if I could just come to your house because you had things to do. I didn't know that was what you were saying. I didn't say it clearly. The man abandoned the cart diagonally across the return. Allison watched him walk away. That bothers you, doesn't it? Deeply. She went over, pulled out the large cart, and pushed it into the correct row. It was such a transparent attempt to please me that I laughed. What? She asked. You saw an opportunity. It needed doing. We both heard it. Her smile faded. I don't know who you are when you're not doing something for me, she said. I slipped the new knob into my purse. I'm not sure I know either. She nodded, not because the answer satisfied her, but because it was true. At home, I installed the knob myself. It fit perfectly. Allison called that evening. I'm not hosting Christmas dinner, she said. I sat down on the bed. What happened? Nothing happened. Then why do you sound as if you've evacuated a building? I told Dad. What did he say? That Christmas at a restaurant is depressing. You suggested a restaurant? Celeste did. There's a place downtown doing a fixed menu on Christmas Eve. Nobody cooks. Nobody cleans. Everyone pays their own way. That sounds expensive. It is. Dad hates it. Of course. He said Christmas should be at home. Whose? He did not answer that. I smiled. What does Graham think? He thinks we should go somewhere with prime rib. I meant about not hosting. He's trying not to look too happy. And what do you want? To not spend 2 days cooking while everyone tells me how you do it? That is a reasonable desire. I told Dad we could go to the restaurant or he and Celeste could host. And? He said Celeste doesn't want 10 people in their house. Then the restaurant seems useful. Allison was quiet. Mom, I'm not doing this because of you. Good. I mean, I am thinking differently because of you, but I'm not refusing to host as some loyalty gesture. Good. You don't sound convinced. I'm practicing not managing your decision. It sounds a lot like disapproval. You'll have to survive not knowing. She made a frustrated noise. Then she laughed. I invited Joanne. She said, that was brave. She asked whether the restaurant serves turkey. What did you tell her? That she can order a steak. She'll come. Will you? I looked toward the dining room. The 2 rosemary plants were dark shapes against the window. Does your father know I'm invited? He assumed. That isn't what I asked. Yes. He knows. And Celeste? She suggested it. Lorraine? Invited. Dean? Also invited. His girlfriend is working. That woman has excellent instincts. Allison waited. I'll think about it, I said. Okay. She did not press. That restraint affected me more than an argument would have. Richard called the following morning. "What did you say to her?" he asked. "Good morning." "What did you say to Allison about Christmas?" "Nothing. She refuses to host. That sounds like something she said to you, not something I said to her. You started this. You say that as if I left a bag of raccoons in her dining room. Don't be ridiculous. I'm trying not to be predictable. Christmas Eve in a restaurant will be surrounded by strangers. You're often surrounded by strangers. Most of them simply know your name." He ignored that. "You always cared about tradition." "I still do." "Then talk sense into her." "No." "Why not?" "Because she made a decision. She's angry at me because Thanksgiving was difficult. She's tired of being responsible for your comfort. I never asked her to cook." I closed my eyes. "You asked why her rolls didn't taste like mine. That was an observation. You changed the time twice. Celeste wanted to eat earlier. Celeste told Allison she didn't care." Richard paused. "Who told you that? It doesn't matter. It clearly does. Everybody is talking about me behind my back. You make it difficult to finish a sentence in front of you." He lowered his voice. "I don't like what this is doing to the family. What is it doing?" "Lorraine skipped Sunday. Celeste doesn't want to go to Allison's. Now Christmas is in some overpriced dining room. You could invite everyone to your house. We don't have the space. You had space for a second armchair and the good television. That is not the same thing. No, chairs don't expect gravy." He exhaled the familiar sigh. I almost ended the call. Then he said, "I miss you." The words were so quiet that I wondered whether I had invented them. "You miss the dinners," I said. "I miss knowing where everyone would be. That isn't the same as missing me. I knew you'd say that. What do you miss about me?" He did not answer immediately. "The way you laugh before you want to," he said. "You try to hold it in, and then you look angry because you laughed." I looked down at my hand. "That isn't why you called." "No, but it's true. Probably." Richard had always been capable of tenderness at the precise moment it could confuse a clear decision. "I'm not coming back to Sunday dinner so you can know where I am," I said. "I didn't ask you to. You asked me to make Allison bring the dinners back. That isn't the same. It is to her." He went quiet. "I don't know how we all got here," he said. "I do." I ended the call more gently than I intended. On Saturday, I called Allison. "I'll come Christmas Eve." "Okay." She tried to sound casual and failed. "But I need to ask you something," I said. "What?" "Do you want me there even if your father decides not to come?" She did not answer immediately. When she did, her voice was steady. "Yes." "Even if Lorraine makes other plans?" "Yes." "Even if it's just you, Graham, Joanne, and me eating overpriced prime rib?" "Yes, Mom." The answer loosened something I had been holding since the pantry. "Then I'll be there." Allison exhaled. "Good. Am I supposed to bring anything?" "Your credit card." "That is a terrible invitation. It's a very expensive restaurant." I laughed before I wanted to. Then I became annoyed that she heard it. On Christmas Eve, I wore the black blouse from Richard's birthday. The flower streak had come out in the wash. I stood before the mirror, smoothing the fabric over my waist, half expecting the pantry door to appear behind me. Instead, my bedroom reflected an unmade bed, a lamp Joanne hated, and 2 coats draped over a chair. Nothing had changed, except where I was going. The restaurant occupied the ground floor of an old hotel downtown. White lights wrapped the trees outside, and a doorman in a green coat directed us through revolving doors as though we might otherwise become trapped until spring. Joanne met me in the lobby. "You wore heels," I said. "It's Christmas. You complain that heels were invented by men who hate women. They were. These were on sale." She hooked her arm through mine. The dining room had dark wood walls and tiny lamps on every table. A pianist played songs slowly enough to make them sound like apologies. Allison stood when she saw us. She wore a green dress and had left her hair loose. For once, there was no apron folded over a chair, no stain spreading across her blouse, no timer sounding in another room. "You came," she said. "I made a reservation. I made the reservation. Then I arrived for it." She hugged me. Graham kissed my cheek and pulled out the chair beside Allison. My place was between her and Joanne. Across from us, 2 empty seats waited for Richard and Celeste. Lorraine and Paul sat farther down. Paul wore a holiday tie covered in tiny saws. "Woodworking joke," he explained. "I was afraid to ask," I said. Dean arrived with his girlfriend, Angela, who had unexpectedly been released from work. She shook my hand with the alert calm of a woman who spent most holidays around breathing equipment and now had to spend one around Dean. Richard and Celeste were late. At 7:35, Allison checked her phone. At 7:40, the waiter asked whether we wanted to order drinks. "We should wait," Allison said automatically. Graham looked at her. She looked at the 2 empty chairs. Then she handed the wine list to Joanne. "Pick something." "Why me?" "Because Mom will choose what Dad likes." The accuracy made me wince. "I can choose a wine without consulting your father. Then you pick." I examined the list. The prices contained digits I did not usually associate with beverages. At 7:45, Richard and Celeste entered. Richard looked annoyed before he reached the table. "Parking is highway robbery," he announced. "Parking is free with validation," Graham said. "Nobody told me that. It's on the sign." Richard removed his coat and handed it to the waiter, who was not the coat attendant. Celeste retrieved it with a quiet apology. She sat across from me. "Merry Christmas," she said. "Merry Christmas." Her gaze touched my blouse. I wondered whether she recognized it. If she did, she gave no sign. Richard looked at the open wine bottle. "You started without us. You were late," Allison said. No apology followed. A small silence opened and closed. "Good," Celeste said, reaching for a glass. "I need wine." The fixed menu offered 3 choices for each course. Richard objected to the lack of prime rib until Allison pointed out the second option was prime rib. "It says horseradish crust," he said. "You like horseradish," I told him, "not on prime rib." Celeste lifted her menu. "He likes it beside the prime rib where it has learned boundaries." I laughed before I could stop myself. Richard looked betrayed. "You two have become very entertaining." "Spite is an excellent fertilizer," Celeste said. I stared at her. She smiled into her wine. Dinner arrived 1 careful plate at a time. Nobody had to stand. Nobody asked where the serving spoon was. When I finished my soup, a waiter took the bowl before I could reach for it. My hand moved anyway. Allison noticed. "So did mine," she whispered. "What?" "My hand. I almost took your plate." We looked at the waiter carrying it away. "Do we tip him or adopt him?" she asked. "Your father will decide after dessert." Richard heard his name. "What?" "Nothing," we said together. The prime rib came with small potatoes stacked into cylinders. Richard separated his horseradish crust from the meat and moved it to the side of his plate. "There," Celeste said. "It's where you wanted it." "This is not as good as the roast," he told me. Allison put down her fork. "We aren't comparing everything to Mom's cooking tonight." It was a compliment. "To whom?" "To your mother." "Then say something about her that isn't food." Richard looked at me. I wanted to rescue him. The old impulse rose so quickly I had to grip my knife. He said, "She looks nice." Allison waited. "What?" he asked. "Nothing." No, clearly that wasn't enough. I didn't say anything. "You made a face." "I have a face." Joanne leaned toward me. "This is better than Chinese food. Please eat." Richard cut into his meat with unnecessary force. Then Celeste said, "Elaine found the mystery book you wanted for years." He looked at the place setting. "Yes." "That was thoughtful," Allison said. "It was." Richard met my eyes. Very thoughtful. The moment was awkward, but it was not false. "Thank you," I said. Conversation shifted to Paul's woodworking show. He had purchased a piece of walnut he intended to turn into a side table. Lorraine said it had occupied half their bedroom for 3 weeks. "It needs to acclimate," Paul insisted. "To what?" Dean asked. "Marriage." Angela covered her mouth with her napkin. By dessert, Richard had stopped complaining. He and Graham argued about whether a cake described as flourless was still cake. Celeste asked Joanne about her ceramic pilgrims, which led to a 15-minute story containing very little truth. Allison sat back in her chair. She was not monitoring the water glasses. She was not looking toward the kitchen. Her face was relaxed in a way I had not seen at her own table. When the check came, the waiter placed it beside Richard. Allison reached for it. "We're doing separate checks." "I've got it," Richard said. "You don't need to. I know. There are 10 people. I can count." Celeste touched his arm. "Let him." Richard gave his card to the waiter before anyone could continue. It was generous. It was also the sort of gesture that allowed him to become the host without doing any hosting. Both things could be true. "Thank you, Dad," Allison said. "You're welcome." He looked down the table. Merry Christmas. There was no speech about family. Nobody applauded. Dean asked if the tip was included. Outside, snow had begun falling in damp flakes. While we waited for our coats, Allison came to stand beside me. "That was the first holiday meal I've eaten while it was hot," she said. "I doubt that. I'm serious." "What about last Christmas?" I reheated my plate twice. I remembered complimenting the potatoes while Allison cleared wrapping paper from beneath the table. "I didn't notice," I said. "I know." She did not say it cruelly. Richard and Celeste left together. Lorraine and Paul shared a cab. Dean and Angela walked toward the parking garage, arguing pleasantly over whether he had eaten both desserts. Graham brought the car around for Allison. Before she got in, she said, "Could we have coffee again next week?" "Yes, somewhere without quarterly targets." "That seems wise." She smiled. Our coffees became a Thursday habit. Not every Thursday. Allison canceled once because a shipment arrived damaged. I canceled once because Marcy persuaded me to attend another pottery class. My bowl survived the kiln but leaned so badly that Joanne used it to hold mail. We did not discuss the pantry each time. Allison told me about work. I told her Marcy had begun dating a man who pronounced bruschetta incorrectly and might be rejected on that basis. We argued over whether the cabinet knob was truly better than the one I chose. One Thursday, Allison asked what I missed about being married. "Having another person hear strange noises at night," I said. "That's all?" "No, but it's what I miss at 2 a.m. She admitted she sometimes drove around for 10 minutes before going home because Graham was so gentle during arguments that she could not tell whether he was angry. "He's angry," I said. His ears turned pink. "I know about the ears." "Then why are you confused?" "Because I want him to say it." The similarity was obvious enough that neither of us mentioned it. She began calling before she came to my house. The first time, she stood on the porch even though I had said the door was unlocked. I opened it and told her she could come in. "I know," she said. "I wanted you to open it." We had coffee at the kitchen table. She left after an hour without borrowing anything. In late January, she called on a Wednesday evening. "Can I come over?" "Now, if that's okay." "Is something wrong?" "No." Her answer sounded rehearsed. She arrived carrying no purse, no bowl, no work bag, and no excuse. I let her in. "Do you want coffee?" I asked. "No, thank you." She sat at the kitchen table. I sat across from her. The rosemary Celeste had given me had grown new branches. Its roots had settled enough that I could turn the pot without the stems bending toward the old position. Allison folded her hands. "I've been trying to apologize," she said. "You have?" "No. I've been trying to get you to accept an apology so I could feel better." I stayed quiet. She looked frightened, but she did not look away. "I knew you thought you were invited to Dad's birthday dinner," she said. "I didn't correct you because I needed you to cook." I told myself you understood, but if I really believed that, I wouldn't have taken you into the pantry. My throat tightened. I used Celeste as an excuse even though she never asked me to make you leave. I was afraid Dad would stop coming if she was uncomfortable, and I thought you would keep coming no matter what I did. She swallowed. "When Dean arrived, I didn't choose him over you. I chose Dad's comfort over your dignity. Then I let everyone think you walked out over a chair because I didn't want them to know what I said." No explanation followed, no mention of stress, Thanksgiving or how hard the divorce had been for her. I called you dramatic, she continued. I asked you to apologize to me. I kept asking what you wanted me to do because I wanted a task, not because I wanted to understand. Her fingers pressed together until the knuckles whitened. I'm sorry I told you that wasn't your family. I'm sorry I acted as if being my mother made you permanent enough to mistreat. I looked toward the window. The glass reflected both of us at the table, my gray hair and her dark hair, our hands folded in nearly the same way. I don't expect you to trust me because I said this correctly once, she said. And I'm not asking you to come back to Sunday dinner. What are you asking? Her eyes filled, but she did not reach for a tissue. I'm asking whether I can keep learning how to be your daughter when I don't need something. The question stayed between us, quiet and costly. For once, I did not answer quickly enough to save either of us from it. Yes, I said. Allison's shoulders lowered, but I held up one hand. Yes, you can keep learning. That doesn't mean we return to what we were doing before. I know. I don't think you do yet. She nodded for me to continue. No more using your father's feelings to explain your choices. If you want something from me, you ask for it as yourself. Not because your father expects it, Celeste might be uncomfortable, Lorraine assumes I'll do it, or Graham thinks it would help. All right. No asking me to cook my way back into the family. I won't. And no deciding I'm fine because I look useful. Her eyes dropped to the table. I won't do that either. You probably will. She looked up. So will I said. We've both had a lot of practice. The faintest smile touched her mouth. What do we do instead? Coffee, phone calls, ordinary things. That's all? It's a beginning. What about Sundays? I have plans on Sundays with Marcy and Joanne, sometimes Lorraine. Aunt Lorraine goes? She came last week. Paul brought a cutting board shaped like Delaware. Why Delaware? He says it's a natural serving shape. For what? Nothing anyone could identify. Allison laughed, then looked almost guilty for it. You don't need my permission to laugh, I said. I don't know what I'm allowed to do. That feeling will pass. Did yours? Not yet. Her face softened. She reached for a tissue at last and wiped beneath her eyes. I thought if I could keep everyone at one table, it meant the divorce hadn't taken anything, she said. It took things. I know. You were allowed to be angry about that. I was angry at Dad. But you couldn't risk showing him. No. So you made me carry it. Her jaw tightened as she fought another round of tears. Yes. I let the answer remain what it was. After a moment, she said, I'm sorry you were lonely. That wasn't entirely your fault. I didn't notice. I worked hard to make my loneliness convenient. She looked at me. I taught you that love looked like somebody anticipating every need before it was spoken, I continued. I taught you that showing up meant staying after everyone else had gone. Then I got angry when you believed me. That doesn't make what I did your fault. No, it means the pattern didn't begin in the pantry. She reached across the table and laid her hand near mine, not touching. Do you forgive me? I considered giving her the answer mothers are supposed to give. I forgive you enough to begin, I said. I don't forgive you enough to pretend it never happened. That's fair. You may not always think so. Probably not. I turned my hand palm up. She placed hers in it. We sat that way until the refrigerator began humming. Then Allison laughed wetly and said, Your appliances have terrible timing. That refrigerator has heard worse. She stayed for another hour. We discussed nothing important. A neighbor had left a broken chair on the curb. Allison's office had finally found someone who wanted 600 left-handed wrist braces. Marcy's relationship with the man who mispronounced bruschetta had ended after he corrected the way she said espresso. When Allison stood to leave, she put on her coat without asking whether I needed anything from the store. At the door, she said, Coffee Thursday? Yes. And I'm not supposed to invite you to Sunday dinner. Correct. What if I actually want to invite you someday? Then you will ask, and I'll decide. She nodded. Good night, Mom. Good night, Allie. She waited on the porch until I closed the door. I did not give her a key. Our beginning was less graceful than the apology. At the next Thursday coffee, Allison spent 20 minutes complaining about Richard, then caught herself and said, "I'm doing the thing. You are. Why didn't you stop me? I wanted to see how long it took you." She threw a napkin at me. 2 weeks later, she called at 9 on a Saturday morning. "Can I ask you something without it being a pattern?" "You can ask. Graham's getting an award at work. I want to make that chocolate cake he likes." "The one with coffee and the frosting?" "Yes." "Do you want the recipe or do you want me to make it?" "The recipe." "Are you sure?" "No, but I'm asking for the recipe." I sent it, including every small thing I usually did automatically. Dissolve the cocoa in hot water. Cool the layers completely. Do not substitute margarine no matter what Graham says about cholesterol. The cake sank in the middle. Allison filled the crater with frosting and sent me a photograph. "Architectural feature," she wrote. "Looks expensive," I replied. "Graham ate 2 pieces. When my car needed a new alternator, I asked Allison to drive me home from the repair shop. I nearly called Joanne instead. Asking my daughter for help felt dangerously similar to stepping back into the old arrangement, except this time I was the one needing something. Allison arrived 12 minutes early. She drove me home, came inside for coffee, and never mentioned the favor again. She did not use it to borrow the blue bowl. She did not announce that she had shown up for me. It was only a ride. I had forgotten how healing ordinary things could be when no one turned them into proof. The old Sunday dinner did not survive in its old form. For several weeks, Allison kept hosting Richard, Celeste, Graham, and whichever relatives were available. Then one Sunday, Richard informed her he would arrive at 5 instead of 6 because he wanted to watch a game at home. Allison told him dinner was at 6. He said family should be flexible. She said family could also operate a microwave. Richard ate at home that night. Celeste went to Allison's without him and brought the vinegary vegetables. The next week, Allison and Graham went to a concert. There was no dinner. Lorraine and Paul attended a furniture exhibition where Paul bought another piece of wood he could not explain. Richard called me to complain that no one respected tradition anymore. "What are you eating?" I asked. "A sandwich." "Sounds flexible." He ended the call first. Nothing collapsed. That seemed to surprise him. Eventually, Celeste began inviting Allison and Graham to their house once or twice a month. She cooked food that tasted nothing like mine. Richard ate it. When he complained, Allison told him he could cook the following week. He did not cook, but he complained less. Lorraine moved freely among all of us. She came to my Sunday suppers, went to Allison's when invited, and had lunch with Richard without treating any of those choices as a political declaration. It took her 3 months to stop reporting what one person said about another. Graham came to my house one afternoon carrying the office chair from Allison's. "I'm not sure I want that," I said. "The wheel broke. I thought you might know where to get a replacement. That is not my chair." "I know. You drove here to ask me about a wheel?" "No." He set the chair on my porch and sat in it. It tilted sharply to the left. "I wanted to thank you," he said. "For what?" "Allison talks to me differently." "How?" "She asks what I think before explaining why I'm wrong. That's progress. She also told me I'm allowed to be angry." "You've always been allowed. I know, but I like not having to be. Until you didn't." He smiled. "Do your ears still turn pink?" I asked. "They do not. They're pink now. It's cold. It was May." I helped him find the replacement wheel online. He ordered it himself. In early spring, Allison invited me to dinner on a Wednesday. She called 2 days before and said, "This is an invitation, not an assignment. We're ordering pizza. What kind? You can choose one topping." This family is learning democracy slowly. I entered through the front door at 6:15. Celeste and Richard were not there. Neither were Lorraine and Paul. It was only Allison, Graham, and me. We ate pizza from cardboard boxes and watched Graham attempt to repair a lamp while refusing to read the instructions. Afterward, Allison reached for my plate. "I can carry it," I said. "I know. I'm taking it because I'm standing." She put it in the dishwasher. I let her. When she asked whether I wanted to stay for coffee, I did. When she called the following Sunday to ask if I wanted to come for dinner, I declined because Joanne and Marcy were coming to my house. Allison said, "Okay, another time." No accusation followed. No photograph of her table arrived later. The younger rosemary flourished. Its stems became woody enough to stand without support, and I moved it into a larger clay pot. The older plant remained beside it, crooked but stubborn. I stopped turning either one toward the light. Plants, I discovered, sometimes knew what direction they needed better than I did. By June, our Sunday suppers had become a loose rotation. Marcy hosted when she wanted to experiment with recipes nobody else trusted. Joanne hosted when she could order food. I hosted most often because I liked cooking when cooking was not the price of admission. One Thursday, Allison asked, "Would you ever invite Graham and me?" We were sitting at our usual cafe table. The man with the quarterly targets was nowhere in sight. I've thought about it. What stops you? I don't want you to feel like I'm asking you to choose between my dinner and your father's. You aren't responsible for whether I feel that. I raised my eyebrows. She smiled. I've been practicing. What would you tell him? That we have plans? What if he asks where? I'd tell him the truth. And if he says I'm trying to divide the family, I'd tell him to order a sandwich. I laughed. "Come Sunday," I said, 4 o'clock. "Should we bring anything?" "Wine." "What kind?" "Ask Marcy. She drinks most of it." "Okay." "Do not come at 2. I heard you. She arrived at 2:45. I opened the door and stared at her. "You said not to. This is almost 3. She stood on the porch holding a casserole dish wrapped in 2 towels. Her face had the hopeful, guilty look of someone caught smuggling food across a border. "What is that?" "Potatoes. I made potatoes." "These are different potatoes." "How?" "They have cheese." "Mine also have cheese." "Graham likes these." "Where is Graham?" "He's getting the wine." "You came early to work. I came early to spend time with you, while carrying a casserole." The casserole was incidental. I took the dish from her. It was warm and heavier than incidental. In the kitchen, she removed her coat and reached automatically for the apron hanging beside the pantry. I caught it first. "What?" she asked. "Sit down. I can help. I know. You're cooking. The food is almost done. I could set the table. It's set." She looked through the dining room doorway. 5 places waited around the table. Mine, hers, Graham's, Joanne's, and Marcy's. "I can open the wine when Graham comes. Sit, Allie." Her hand remained half lifted. "I don't want everyone thinking I arrived early and did nothing. Joanne will think you arrived early because she considers anything before 4 a medical emergency. Marcy will not notice. I feel strange. I know. What am I supposed to do?" I put her casserole on the counter. "Tonight, you don't have to earn your chair." Her face changed. For a moment, we were back in the pantry. I could almost hear ice falling into a glass and Richard laughing in the next room. I could see the silver cake server in my hand, the office chair in Graham's, and my daughter waiting for me to make myself smaller. Then the moment passed. Allison sat at the kitchen table. I poured us each a glass of water. Hers had ice. "Tell me something dull," I said. She laughed. "What?" "Marcy says it's part of being a guest." Allison considered. "The supplier sent the correct wrist braces. All 600? 60 assorted. That is dull. I can try harder." She told me about a new filing system at work. I checked the chicken once, then left it alone. She did not follow me to the stove. Graham arrived at 3:30 with 2 bottles of wine and the repaired office chair. "I thought you could use another chair," he said. "I have 5 dining chairs. This one has history. It tilts." I fixed the wheel. He sat in it to demonstrate. The chair rolled backward and struck the wall. Allison and I laughed before either of us wanted to. Joanne arrived at 4:12, which she described as precisely on time. Marcy came behind her carrying flowers without a vase. We sat down. Allison's potatoes were better than mine. I told her so. She looked suspicious. "Are you being nice? They have more cheese." Graham lifted his glass. That's why I married her. No one asked why Richard was not there. Dinner moved around us in ordinary pieces. Joanne complained about the chicken. Marcy told the story of the bridge wife, even though we had all heard it. Graham's office chair creaked whenever he leaned back. Allison ate while her food was hot. When the meal was over, everyone began clearing plates. Allison reached for mine, then paused. "May I?" she asked. I handed it to her. She carried it into the kitchen with her own. Her chair remained at the table, waiting.